Greetings, everybody. Welcome. We are going to be kicking off Friday Night Fights here in a little bit. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's check. Ooh, that's yummy. Let's check if we're live on Twitch. We are. We're live on Twitch. That's good. We got Mouse Slip waiting for the tournament to kick off. Hey, Mouse Slip. Hey, Knight Without Armor. All your pieces are belong to us. Good to see you all. I hope you have a great game today. Tu veux leur faire une petite danse avant le tournoi d'échecs encore une fois? Non, ok. Tu veux juste voir? C'est juste moi qui mange une poire en attendant.
Watch what you're like doing.
D'accord, d'accord.
It's Lily's.
All right, folks. So here, if we go to the Chess Dojo Club here, right? I'll send the link to folks over on YouTube to help them. For anybody else, you know, you can see the link below my face in the text there, the info text. We can go to upcoming events and see Friday Night Fights under 1600 and 1600 plus. We got the two sections open and available there. Yeah, let me click on the other section and see, who's there. If there's anybody waiting to play. Let's give it a try. All right, we got a trucker waiting. Welcome, JC.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Hope you'll have some good opponents today. I've been playing some blindfold chess, so let me fix the pieces for you all. Did you know it was this easy to play blindfold chess on chess.com? Just under this pieces option. Here, let me show you guys. Uh-oh. Someone got some stuff on my keyboard here, and it was probably me. Okay, so you see just under pieces here, I think I normally use classic, and you just... So you go classic, you know, save, then you just see the pieces appear, right? And if you want to play blindfold, all you do is you just go here and pick blindfold pieces. Yeah. As I recall, not to take too much credit, but as I recall, that was my idea because... people were requesting in the early days on chess.com that we add this feature, right? And we had like one programmer and a long list of feature requests and stuff, right? And I think I had the idea. I said to Eric, if you just created a new font, because Eric liked designing new piece fonts. And I told him, if you just create a piece font, I don't know if anyone can hear me over the screaming, but if you just create a piece font that's empty, like an empty file for the pieces, no pixels, nothing, and people select that, then they'll just be playing blindfold, just like that. So, I mean, it doesn't force your opponent to be playing blindfold. It doesn't allow you to have like a blindfold rating system because it's kind of honor system, I guess, if you want to play blindfold with someone. But it certainly lets you, you know, practice the idea as you like. So, yeah, a couple times this week I had like 10 minutes free. It wasn't enough time to dive into any real chess studying, and I was tired. So I thought I'll just play a quick blindfold game as a tiny bit of practice. All right, so Bumps has a question. Would signing up be beneficial for someone with beginner's knowledge? Haven't played in 20 plus years, so you could consider me brand new, because whatever you learned, you pretty much forgot, except Bumps remembers how the pieces do move around. So you could probably stumble your way through a game. Good question, Bumps. Do you mean signing up for our tournaments tonight, presumably? $15 a month. Oh, no, you're asking about our training program then, not about the tournament tonight. The training program starts with a 0 to 300 level training program, and then progresses to a 3 to 400 level training program, 4 to 500 level program. So my guess is that you're probably at least a 0 to 300 level. So basically, if you are interested in training, it doesn't matter if you're a beginner or an advanced player. We've got a training plan for you. We've got a training plan that Jesse, Kostya, and I use, right, at an IM and GM level. So there is a training plan for absolute beginners. It's a fairly simple plan. The main question for any level of using the Dojo training plan, I think, is do you want to train for 3 hours or more per week? Because if you only want to do like 15 or 20 minutes a week, then you're unlikely to see a lot of progress, and then you might feel like it wasn't a great deal to pay for a training program or system, right? But if you are going to devote 3 or more hours a week, you could expect to make progress, and then our training program can guide you so that you make good use of those hours. And at higher levels, you would have to use more than 3 hours a week, really. Like if someone's over 2,000, they probably have to train 5-10 hours to make progress, just because at that level, everyone else who's rated 2,000 is training all the time. And you know so much about chess that you're always forgetting some stuff about chess. So the hour requirement goes up a little bit, maybe in the upper echelons, but that's irrelevant to Bump's question. So, hey Bumps, I got nothing better to do than answer your questions right now. And Chess Pawn's question. No, this is not a new house. It's just the sun's now setting at 8:05 p.m. instead of 4:05 p.m. So you get a different view of the situation here with some light. Yeah. So yeah, if you're a beginner and you're interested in training and you have $15, then it'll, if you've got 3 hours and $15, then it'll probably be good for you.
Let's go change your diaper.
I would guess. And for everybody, $15 means a different thing. For some people it's a small cost, for some people it's a big cost. We understand that. So whether or not anything is worth it depends on, the money you have to do it. You're going to try and teach your son some chess? Cool. Depending on how old your son is, hit me up again in a week or two, and we can talk about how to some pointers for getting your son into it. Okay. I do have a video up on YouTube about how to teach a 2 to 4 year old chess. So even some young ones. So that's a cool resource. I'm going to put this on quiet for like 5 minutes. The tournament starts in 14-15 minutes, folks, for those who want to play. And when I say tournament, tonight it's just playing one game, right? Like you just get in there, you play one classical game, you put your heart into it. Well, let me say what this is before I step away from 5 minutes. Sorry. So for anyone who doesn't know, Friday Night Fights, it's basically a moment in time where you can conveniently play from home one very serious, slow time control game against another serious opponent who's unlikely to trash talk you at the end and very likely to talk to you about the game at the end if you've got some questions. Like, let's say, for example, you're lucky enough to lose your game tonight. Probably the person you play against will answer some questions you might have about the game. Like, for example, hey, I thought my opening position was good and then I ended up losing. Do you know where I went wrong? Right? Or that endgame you played seemed kind of magical. Like, how did you do it? Or what were you trying to achieve? Because like suddenly my position was under pressure and I didn't see how it came about. It's a very good chance that if you should be so lucky as to lose tonight, your opponent will answer some questions like that for you and you'll be able to learn some stuff. If not, I'm around. I might be able to answer a couple questions for you. That's part of the point of it. And during the games, from about 8 p.m. Pacific, which is in 12 minutes, from about 8 p.m. Pacific till about 11:30 p.m. Pacific, I will be here live analyzing games, making comments on the games as they're played. So while you're playing, you'll want to have your computer, you'll want to have the stream closed or muted so you don't hear me during your game. it all gets recorded. And so after you play your game, you can go back and check the video on demand, the VOD, and or ask me first if I covered your game. You can go back and watch all the commentary in real time on your game and see what I and other people in the chat were thinking about as we were watching you play. Okay? So with that said and explained, I'm going to just go help some of my kids like brush teeth or things like that for about 5 minutes. Then I'll be back to keep telling people how to join the tournament. For anyone who doesn't know, let me try and help with just a couple more links as I walk away here. So here's the Dojo Club for people on YouTube, so you can get in there. People on Twitch, here's the fight. And since there's very few people here so far, let's do a quick announcement on Twitter. We'll say Chess Dojo Friday night fights. Like every Friday night, are starting in about 10 minutes. Come by for some serious fighting. No, come by. I never know what to say. Come by to play or watch. And then we'll give them a link to our situation here. All right, folks. I'll be back in 5 minutes. All right. We are back. How's it going, everybody? Let's go check our tournament attendance. We just need one more player in the under 1600. Great. So, hopefully my sound is back on, my mic or whatever. Folks can hear me. I guess for many of us, it's the end of the week. I hope you all had a good week and have just a little bit left in the tank to play your game here. I'm going to check the 1600 plus group as well. See if they need any more opponents for their tournament to kick off. All right, they got 4, so they're good. And of course, for anyone who's not aware, you can join later on. We just need at least 4 at 8 o'clock or chess.com cancels the tournaments. But as long as we've got 4 people, people can come in at 8:30, 9, 10, midnight, 1 a.m., any time for the next 24 hours and play a game here. Cool. All right. So, what else should we do while we wait? Anybody want to tell me about their week? Should we just chat about the week we had, or do you guys want to hear some news from the chess world? Or maybe a little puzzle to solve? What should we do? In chess news this week, chess.com is hosting a PogChamps. I'm not sure if it's PogChamps 5 or 6. It's something like that, I think. They've hosted a few before. The first one may have been during the pandemic. Not anymore. She's capable. Okay. So they had a PogChamps tournament. And I guess I saw that one of the players in the tournament was cheating or something like that. So that's unfortunate. Hey, Mouselip. A name is taken. Welcome. Yes, I do hope we all have good games. Saturday morning fight for the Philippines, yeah. I know the Friday night thing makes it sound like it's all, California and America centric, but actually this time is so late that I don't think we've got the hugest number of American participants. This is actually one of our few tournaments that's held at a good time for people in like Australia, for example, and probably a decent time for folks in the Philippines. So I'm sorry, not sorry about the title. The whole point is that Friday Night Fights sounds good. Honestly, if I held this tournament at Thursday morning, I would probably want to call it Friday Night Fights. But anyway, folks in the Philippines and everywhere else, you are very welcome to our tournaments today. And yeah, I hope everybody has a great game. Yeah, Mouselip with the good sportsmanship there, hoping for everybody out there to have good games, even your opponent maybe, right? So, yeah, so that was one chess news this week. I think they had the finals today. Somebody probably won it. Somebody else probably didn't win it. And what else is going on? There were some Bundesliga games. And then one of the coolest chess stories of the year so far, I think, Vasily Ivanchuk. Does anybody know who that is? He's got to be like 50 years old by now, right? Because, I mean, he's sort of contemporaries with Anand, and Anand is 55. So Ivanchuk, probably like 58 or something. Let me see if I can figure it out. He was born in 1969. So he's like 56 right now. Okay, a year younger-ish than I was guessing. Yeah, it's definitely late to start a game. Name is taken, but hopefully it'll go well for you anyway. So Vasily Ivanchuk, who is one of Mouselip's heroes, this guy was one of the greatest chess players in the world when I was a kid learning chess about 30 years ago. And at the time, he would have been, I guess, 26 or something like that. He was so good. You were born in 1960. Okay, you're a little bit older than me. But anyway, Ivanchuk is, I guess, sort of your generation, right? But anyway, for those who are younger than me, that's who I'm introducing him for, Mouselip. For those who are younger than you and me, Ivanchuk was one of the top 2 or 3 players in the world for a while. And he's a candidate for one of the most brilliant, most genius chess players to never be a world champion, right? Super creative, like Mouselip says, very, very strong, and one of the first few people with sort of like a level of genius where he could beat Kasparov without Kasparov kind of blundering. Gary Kasparov would occasionally blunder or try too hard to win against somebody, but to actually get outplayed, right? That didn't happen very much to Gary Kasparov, and Ivanchuk was able to do that occasionally. And in the last couple months, Ivanchuk has done great in the last month. He's played 3 amazing tournaments in a row. Reykjavik Open, and then something, and then Menorca this past week. He just won that tournament with a stellar score. He beat this youngster, Nihal Sarin, who's like a 2699 rated Indian 20-year-old, genius from the next generation. He's on an incredible streak, and he's back up into the top 100 in the world and playing chess really great. And that's just super fun and exciting to see, I think. We all get excited when there's a new 10-year-old prodigy, but it's also awesome to see somebody later in life just having a terrific run of form. All right, games are starting in 30 seconds, so as Mouselip counsels us, folks, for those of you who are playing, respect, salute. We hope that you can still use your brains and your time at this late hour of the week. Hope you've got the energy to think a bit about your moves and have a really interesting game. And of course, silence your streams and enjoy. And for those of you who are going to be sticking around with me, we'll be chatting together in a moment here further. So first, I'm going to get a couple games up here to kick us off. So I'm going to open this game. JC Trucker was the first person waiting for this tournament to start 25 minutes ago. So hopefully they're there to play their first move. Maybe a pawn into the center or something would be good. Then we got Bishop and Constructor kicking it off with the king pawn. So let's see. Shoot, we get a game abandoned on the very first move. And, Constructor comes through. Plays a move. Whew. Man, oh man. All right. Now we just need more people to join and get paired and get some more games going. So, Pawn 2, Pawn 3 has joined the tournament just now. Hopefully they'll get repaired with fully rooked in a moment here. And, let's see. Yeah, there we go. Game getting going. So D4, Knight F6. The bishop comes out, preparing to play E3 and let this bishop out without locking the bishop in on C1. So just getting that bishop out to a nice square. Another option was bishop to G5 to develop that piece. Very reasonable, both of these moves. I'm going to close this tournament for a second, and hopefully the games will stay open, and then see if I can't open up some games from the 1600 plus arena. Let's see how that works for me. Often very hard to switch between tournaments on chess.com. So let's see what we got here. We got 6 players. We got 3 games going. The players in this section over 1600, many of whom are very good. I mean, this first game I clicked on, they're both over 2000. These players are playing a time control of 90 plus 30. whereas in the other section it's 45 plus 30. So they've got a lot of time to work with. And you see so far these two players comfortable with the opening. They're adding time with the increment to their hour and a half that they started with, but presumably they'll start thinking when they get out of their theory. That's interesting. On that last board there, just a second, folks, I was expecting that black wouldn't want white to play a5 and that black would play a5 themselves to prevent that. But black just plays knight e8 after a bit of thought, and that gives white the option of pushing forward with a5, which looks really strong, especially since the c5 pawn's not protected, and white does it. And if black pushes or takes, the c5 pawn's going to be hanging. And if black doesn't take, white could take, and the rook's undefended on a8 at the moment. So there would be no easy move for black. This looks like a really big deal. I'm pretty new to this opening. I've basically almost never played it with white. I just sort of studied it one day, and there's a difference between analyzing out some moves and actually playing it. Totally different. I generally don't learn much by studying, actually. I learn more by playing some games. But it seemed to me like you can't let white just play a5 like this. That's what it seemed to me. .5 out of 7. That's great, Trash. Sounds like you had fun, so that's good. But definitely sleep is helpful for playing tournaments, you know. Maybe if you slept more, you would have scored 5 points or 5.5, or who knows, you know. Or you might have played better and somehow lost more games, because sometimes chess is confusing like that, you know. You play really great, but tire yourself out and lose a game, or you play really badly, but at least your opponent hallucinating and then they lose, so who knows. But yeah, I'm glad to hear it sounds like you feel good about your tournament. So white gets in this a5 move. Black plays bishop b7. So now at least if white takes, black can take. And the rook's defended. Strange option of a6, bishop here, kind of misplacing black's pieces for a while. But I feel like I'd rather have the option to open things up and use the a file. So I'm kind of tempted as white to trade on b6, trade the rook, go queen to a1, try and bring the other rook to a1. Just trade everything I can while the rook on f8 can't get here so easily. And it's going to weaken the b6 square so later I could play knight a4 and go after the structure. White just leaves the tension, brings the knight towards these squares, and opens up another lever to open the game. And this move looks great as well. Bishop's actually pretty lame here. Doesn't it normally prefer e6 in this line? You had fun and there were great people at the tournament. Hey, makes me happy just to hear it. Makes me happy just to hear it. Yeah. Okay, so cool start on that game, which I assume favors white. I think the bishop on b7 is misplaced. I think the a5 pawn break is nice for white. I think they've got f4 and knight g4 coming. But bear in mind, black's going to play knight e6 and fight for these two squares. So it's not like over anything. Let's go back to this game, which I'd opened up. So black played knight f6, white played knight c3, saying, hey, maybe I'm going to play e4. Then doesn't do it. Then does do it. Okay. So I think white was thinking if I go e4, black can play e5 with a tempo on my bishop, sort of countering the center. So they play knight f3 to control the e5 square. And then they get e4 anyway. Yeah, nice. Seems like a good opening for white over on this board here. Why is this so good for white? You wouldn't think bishop f4 would be amazing here. Knight c3, huh? Interesting. I mean, it is logical to have this pawn here. It shouldn't be that bad. And knight f6 doesn't look like it could be bad. C6, so maybe black wants to try and play e5 anyway. Definitely logical to try to play e5 here, but you don't even want to play the move c6. Huh. Maybe something for me to learn here. Let me open up the other board as well, though, before I get too deep into trying to figure out something that David doesn't understand. D3, D5, E4, and they head straight to the endgame. I'd love to be in this game myself. Look, see what I said? We've got an Australian playing here. No, a New Zealander. Sorry. So I like that the time of this event makes it accessible to some different time zones. C3, keeping the knight at bay, and preparing to just keep moving this king. Oh, white relents and moves a different piece. Grab some space. Jesse would love this. And how was your week, Far Eastern? You're already into Saturday. All right, which section are you waiting in, Trashy? Which section are you waiting for an opponent in? Jesse likes this and says, like, you know, the player with more pieces out is overextended, and he likes moving his king twice and then expanding with his pawns, like this on the queen side. He says white's better in positions like this. You've just cast a vote. Oh, you guys vote on a Saturday when people are free to vote. That's interesting. Here in the US, we always vote on Tuesdays. Hey, Jay Anand, how are you doing? You had a doubt on one of the videos? It's kind of like it, Jake. You said black hadn't even played c6. So actually the move order was d3, d5, e4. Getting the king here real quick. So elections can be on different days in Singapore, folks. Different days. It rotates around. But if it's a work day, they just make it a holiday. Wow. Nice. People would probably enjoy election day more if it were a national holiday, huh? Is 1d3 a named opening? The website here, chess.com, is calling it the Mises opening. Jacques Mises was a chess player, a strong one. I don't know that he played this opening, but chess.com says it's got a name. And anybody who wants a game, Trashy's waiting in the 1600 plus section. In general, you know, if you join anytime in the next hour, you should probably be able to get a game in at some point here if you like. What's the idea of D3? Yeah, I don't know either. You know, to me, D3, it sort of prepares the move E4, but we could have played E4 to begin with if we really wanted to, right? So yeah, like you, Meg, I don't really see what the move is about. Bumps is willing to vote every day if we just have election holidays day after day after day. Also, as long as the people you want to win don't win bumps, that's also a good reason to just vote again the next day, right? Like you could have a little bumps button. And basically we'd have election day on Monday, and then they'd tally the results. And Monday night at midnight, bumps would say if the results were acceptable or not. If they weren't, bumps would press the button and we'd do election day again the next day. Another holiday. And eventually everyone would have to vote for who Bumps likes just so that we could go back to work. They'd be so tired of vacation. Just caught another little fly in my hand. Wow. Okay, so Marble says, not sure you remember me. I remember you, Marble. Far Eastern says, plenty of Singaporeans are politically apathetic because voting is mandatory or you get removed. So they're forced to participate, but then they're apathetic about it, huh? And also, sorry I didn't say hi to you, Cats Play Chess very well, but you are very welcome to the show. Look at white just continuing to mob with these pawns. Looking for a bishop trap, although the bishop could always get out by whacking on g1. Normally, I'll just say this. I think Jesse normally would play the move knight c4 at this point, looking to just lock in the bishop pair. Now, if you ever play a6 or a5, he will then he'll trade. Jesse would say he's got a big advantage after knight c4, probably. All right, let's see Marble's question. So, you switched from kid to Slav and found a 100-point increase. Didn't think opening even mattered, but apparently did. You know, sometimes switching an opening can be really good for people because a different opening fits them better, or it helps them like grow and learn something new. Or there are people who like variety like me, and they can just get tired of playing the same thing, and just actually playing something you don't know can lead you to just feeling fresher and being more interested in your games, playing better. Some people get bored of playing the same opening for 20 years. Depends on the person. Other people love just playing the same opening forever. So do I think Blitz is good for chess improvement? It can help some people, Marble. It's not the most obvious way for most people to get better. Oh, look, Mig Modicus is somebody who's starting to get bored. Longtime D4 player, right. And so D4 players often do well with the French against E4. They can get locked positions that they like better than the E4 players. So something else for Black, maybe like the French but different. I guess one question, Mig, would be, have you played different lines in the French? Like, for example, if your opponent plays knight c3 on move 3, have you played both knight f6 and bishop b4? Or if your opponent plays knight d2 on move 3, have you played both knight f6 and c5? Because one thing you could do, if the French suits you reasonably well, but you're starting to get bored with it, is you could learn some new lines in the French. Yeah? That could be one idea. If not that, then I think maybe the Petrov would be another opening that would frustrate your e4 opponents and perhaps suit you well. Just playing for a sort of clean, symmetrical equality type game. So, yeah. Yeah, Mig wanted an opening against e4, but for context, they were telling me that they are a d4 player from the white side. You've learned some Fort Knox and that's boring you. The exchange French is like solitary confinement. Okay, then you don't want to play the Petrov because that's like the French exchange. Est-ce qu'il y a une raison que tu restes là? All right, welcome back to me. So Mig's not going to want to play the DE4 French. Mig's not going to want to play the Petrov. So I would say a classic E4, E5, Mig. Rui Lopez. Play a Rui Lopez. You know, a long maneuvering one, like a Chigorin or a Breyer or something. You can look up those names and find which lines I mean. A Chigorin, a Breyer, something like that. Trashy promises not to play the exchange French against you if you give them a game. All right, so A4, A5, B5, knight D8, heading to a pretty good square. Ah, and white goes after this pawn. Hey, not bad. All your pieces are belong to us. Had a real plan there, huh? Knight g6. Maybe, just maybe, black should have taken on g1 to not get the pawn structure hurt. After knight g6, white can hurt your pawn structure. Immediate laser targeting. White's second piece comes out, and it's feeling pretty effective. And somehow white's not behind in development because that knight had to drop back. Was there nothing better black could have done about this b5 moment? I don't know. The knight's really got nowhere else to go. Okay, so in hindsight, I don't know if I would have seen this at the time. But in hindsight, maybe this move should have been answered by the very calm, simple a6. This way you can't kick the knight off of e5 because of takes, rook a1. And if a5, you just tuck your bishop away. Same thing on knight c4. You just, hey, you got to hide your bishop away. Oh, then b5. Uh-oh. No, this is a whole thing. Not only can your opponent play knight e5 here, but they can play b6, which looks even much worse, huh? Hey, Ash, welcome. And Hockey Chess Dude, howdy. No easy answers. That's crazy. How come I don't know what to do about white's a4? Was Jesse right all along? Is white crushing here? What if we just developed this bishop? What if we just developed, huh? Against a5, I'll just go here. I don't care. It's knight c4. Do this. This. Here, defending the pawn, maybe? Well, I think Ash's a5 move wasn't quite that good, huh? Because look, b5, knight moved away, and then knight c4 attacking the e-pawn, and black had to make some kind of concession already. And maybe it was better to take on g1 slightly, but white's already got the bishop pair in a nice position, and now white's up a pawn with the bishop pair in a nice position. Although white's going to have to be careful after winning that pawn. I don't know if I would even take that pawn at this point, because you see it's not even defensible. You might need to do some stuff about your development and your king. But white commits the time to grabbing that pawn. It's going to be hard for black to react savagely since those two minor pieces both have the same dumb square. But maybe potentially you start with bishop here, rook here to try and attack this. There's always bishop a5. Obscenely, white could take that pawn and defend the c-file. Ay, ay, ay. Doesn't feel good, huh? Doesn't feel very hopeful for black, honestly. Yeah. All right, we're going to check some other games. Let's see if the players under 1600 are using their time, huh? Shall we go just have a quick look at... whether the newer players are using their time in their games. Oh, yeah, look at this. 5 and 10 minutes plus the increment spent on the first 8 moves of the opening. Yeah, that's reasonable. Advanced French, bring out some pieces. Save the bishop pair, sure. And now really thinking, yeah, it's awkward to be retreating so much to keep the bishops. At some point, you just have to bring out your knights too, huh? You just have to keep bringing out your pieces. Tricky decision for white to make. This is my water. Let's claim this water. Lovely. Lovely. Take the Friday Night Fights alert off my phone. I did not miss Friday Night Fights. Oh no. All right, white keeps the bishop. White keeps the bishop. And you got to calculate some stuff to play that move because the center pawn is available for black to eat, and Constructor's going to have a good look at it and see if they can get away with grabbing that pawn. The first move to calculate after knight d4 is bishop takes b4. The second thing you have to calculate with knight d4 is queen a4 check. So you definitely don't want to assume that your opponent, they spent some time. So you neither want to assume that they hung the pawn because they thought about it, nor do you want to assume that, oh, they thought about it, so there's no way they're wrong. I can't even consider taking the pawn. You see what I mean? You should neither disrespect your opponent nor have blind faith in them. Does that make sense? You have to think for yourself if you've got time on the clock and, you know, actively question it, but understand there's a good chance your opponent calculated something or had some idea. So you don't just say, oh yeah, looks good to me, boom, and take it, right? If they spent 2.5 minutes maybe hanging the pawn, you should probably be thinking 1 or 2 minutes before you confirm to yourself, yeah, they're hanging the pawn, right? If you thought about it less than them, there's a really good chance that you'll have missed something that they have seen or planned themselves. So I once had a game against an IM. I was not yet an IM at the time, but I was a master. You know, I wasn't an idiot. And I think also it was in a tournament where we were both 3-0 or 4-0 at that time. So, you know, they also had reason to think that I vaguely knew how to play. And we played the opening, and then we got into the beginning of the middle game, and there was a very, very important juncture, and I stopped and I thought for 45 minutes. And after 45 minutes, I played an aggressive move, which gave my opponent a number of options, including an option to seemingly win a piece in one move. I had thought 45 minutes about my move, and until that move, everything was really sound with both of our structures and both of our positions, right? So my opponent and I could each imagine that the position was close to equal, right? No huge mistakes from either side. So I think 45, 46 minutes, 47 minutes on this move, and my opponent, and I am, in about 1 minute, plays the move to win the piece. And that mistake cost him the game. Now, is it possible that I could have blundered knight to g4, winning my piece? Vaguely possible, maybe. It's possible. But if I had blundered my piece, I mean, he had an hour and a half or 2 hours on the clock, right? He could have spent an hour and a half or 2 hours you know, or at least half of that time, 2/3 of that time, thinking about the move. And if he was winning a piece, that would be enough to win the game. But the idea that he's going to answer in 1 minute something that I thought about for 40 plus minutes, 45 plus minutes, that's a huge mistake in terms of how you're using your time, right? We can't even necessarily say that he miscalculated or something. He just didn't even calculate, right? And we can go too far in either direction, right, folks? Are you all aware that sometimes you'll see like a lower rated player? Is Constructor lower rated? Yes. So sometimes a lower rated player will see, oh, this higher rated player played this move. That means that I can't take the pawn. Do you see what I mean? They'll say like, oh, they're too good to have hung that, so I'm not even going to spend my time looking at it. And that can be a mistake as well, right? So you can either underestimate or overestimate your opponent. You have to basically work on yourself mainly, right? You have to work on your own calculations and reach a point where you check things and you believe in your own conclusions about the position rather than assuming your opponent is good or bad. Okay, so black takes, white goes for bishop b4, and now black is in quite a bit of thought, which is weird because when playing knight d4, normally you don't have to look 100 moves ahead, but before you take this pawn, you're thinking for 2 minutes. Probably you've prepared your 1 move answer to queen a4, bishop takes b4 usually, you know, planning 1 move ahead. What if you're in front of Magnus? You actually already know that you have lost. That's the opposite of the advice I'm trying to give, Jay. Even in front of Magnus, if he plays a move that looks like a mistake, you're only going to win the game if you check for mistakes by Magnus. You're not going to win the game by assuming that Magnus couldn't have been a mistake and not even looking at the moves that look like they beat him. If anytime you see a move that looks like it wins against Magnus, you tell yourself, well, he's Magnus. He couldn't have blundered that. I won't even look at it. You're basically adopting a plan of all game long, not looking at your most promising chances to ever win the game. So you're condemning yourself to not winning the game. Okay. Yes, Bumps, you can switch from monthly to yearly if you want to. Okay, takes. With check, not giving white time for queen takes knight at the moment. All right, and Depressoir Enjoyer, sorry, I saw you popped in and said hi. Greetings to you. I just wanted to finish my thought there. So, looks like you've just followed us and chatted with us for the first time. So, welcome to the dojo, my friend. Hope you liked the video about my best games. The first video analyzing game number 10 came out today, I think. So for anyone who saw that video where Sam and Kostya and Jesse ranked the best games of my chess career, I'm now starting to publish the videos going over each game one by one. So, yeah, anybody who's been waiting for those, the first one came out today, I think. Oh, Viral Stigma. Viral Stigma, one of the strongest players ever to play their first OTB tournament game, has just come back from finishing off an unfortunate opponent with tactics. And Jay has already seen that video. So Jay, yeah, tell us what your doubt or question was about that game of mine. If I were white here, I would, by the way, would be thinking I have to block the bishop with my knight probably, right? And then, yeah, then this piece here should be able to escape safely, right? So Constructor was actually absolutely correct in this position to calculation check bishop. That's what I call it, by the way, folks. When somebody does something that seems like it could be a mistake, I call it calculation checking them to spend your time looking if indeed it is a mistake. So Constructor was correct to calculation check. and is going to get away with a free... No! Piece? Pawn? No. Okay, they could have had a free pawn here if the knight had traded on e2 or backed away. Job done. They left it here. And now they're down. Okay, so Jan, in game number 10, I sacrificed a knight. So you must mean knight takes d5. But after queen c3, couldn't you have went long castles? I'd already castled kingside before I sacked my knight. All right, so queen d4 attacked this piece, and black saved that one. But yeah, now we're down a piece from leaving that poor knight dangling on d4. So that's going to be a tough game from here for black. Let's click on some of our other games here. There's a bunch of games going on. Oh, we got Nordovik playing. An angry Narki. Here's Angry Nartier, and here's Nordovik. Whoa, what's going on, Nordovik? It's the middle of, like, madness. Shall we see the last couple moves of the Nordovik game? So, some Sicilian. A Sicilian defense, right? E5, a brave move from black. Check. Nordovik goes for the dark squared bishop trade, which looks nice for white, honestly. I think this move is probably going to turn out to be a mistake, by the way, on instinct, this bishop b4. In my experience, this kind of bishop check move, if the opponent has no piece developed yet on the queen side, when they play bishop d2, you often have to trade and bring out another piece of whites. It's actually a way to get behind in development. A lot of people think, you know, because they're saying check, it's like I developed with tempo, I'm getting ahead. But you spent one move on a bishop, they spend one move on a bishop. You spend a second move on a bishop, they spend one move on a queen or knight. And so actually, the situation now is it's black's move and white has one more piece out than they did at this point, see? So black moves the bishop twice. White gets a recapture, bringing out a new piece. That's a way to get behind in chess. And not only that, but the dark squared bishop trade in this case seems to be weakening this square. Very hard for black to guard. Yeah. So knight f6, check, king here. And a new knight comes out, defending this. Good. Knight d4. Knight back to b5. Okay. Very aggressive from black. Normal move would be to trade. Trade. Rook here and try and get your king out of the way. Pretty much, right? But black says, let us explode the position, deal with the bad d-pawn, and get this bishop out quickly. And if it works out for black, it's going to ruin white, right? So, tricky and critical moment for Nordovik. My preliminary calculation says pawn takes pawn would have won a pawn for Nordovik here. Should we check on that? Knight takes pawn check also looks like it wins a pawn. Oh, no, it doesn't. Okay, so here's what I'm thinking. Pawn takes pawn. Knight takes, knight takes, knight takes, pawn takes, pawn takes, pawn takes, and white's up a pawn. Yeah, so basically, where do you expect to play the most bumps? Folks, Bumps is asking me about when you register on the Chess Dojo website, and he's going to be setting up a profile, right? When you're setting up a profile, it asks you for a preferred rating system. That's to track your progress, right? So we want the rating system that you expect to kind of play the most or care the most about. Sometimes people play more Blitz than OTB tournaments, but they care more about the OTB tournaments and feel like that really reflects their progress better. So if you plan to play in over the board, and this is something you can always change, by the way, the preferred rating system. You can change it later. But if you plan to play online, pick an online rating system like chess.com or Lichess. If you plan to play in what we call over the board tournaments, pick one of those. Welcome to the dojo, Sticky Pawns. Hi to you. Sorry, folks. Jay Anon is asking me a question about my video, so I'm going to go and answer that question real quick, even though it's a little bit off to the side of our show here.
Fargo is your virtual... Let's
mute that. So it's going to be at 5:12. Whoa, this is really early in the video. What? There's no peace sack at minute 5:12, Janond. It's just the starting position of the Najdorf. Confusing. What can I say but confusing? All right, yeah, so if you're just going to play online, pick either chess.com or Lichess, I guess, depending on whichever one you prefer, expect to play most and all. It feels like Nordovic could have won a pawn with this. Of course, there is also this tricky move from black going after c2. White gets the chance to throw in d6 check, which I think is slightly disruptive for black, and then play bishop d3 to defend c2. And white should be good. Yeah, there's just no knight sack there, Janond. I just don't know what you're talking about, I'm afraid. So, sorry. Just can't figure it out for the life of me. I think you've got something wrong, like the video or the timestamp or something. All right, so let's get further into this Drew game. So Drew chose to trade on d4. Pawn takes. Now, in the game, Drew plays e5, I think, which is exciting. Yeah, if queen d4, pawn takes, and you can't win this pawn, even though you've got two attackers, because the queen's undefended. Yeah, so e5 makes sense. Black's got to trade knights. Trades with check. Yeah, king f6 seems the only way to not lose a pawn here, or pawn takes f6. Black moves away. That's a little bit worse than just taking the pawn, even though taking the pawn's not amazing. All right, so now white's up a pawn, so they just trade queens and start playing simple moves, trading stuff. Simple stuff. Simple stuff. Okay. So now Nordovic's up a pawn in a rook endgame. That's usually about 50-50 to try to win the game. Because black's got three isolated pawns, white's chances are better than 50-50 here. Probably a very good chance of a win, but I could already point out maybe one small improvement for Nordovic. Trading connects black's pawns. So, oh, I don't know, Dabo. Jesse says Nordovic. I say Nordovic. And yeah, we could also just call him Drew. Oh, yeah, Nordovik is actually American. Yeah. So what I would recommend here, technique-wise, for white, is rook e3 with the idea of doubling the rooks like this when black doubles the rooks. And if black takes, you can take with your king. We're trying to keep this pawn isolated because eventually it's a good target to attack. Oh yeah, I've never seen Nordovik dressed up in Navajo headgear either. Sorry, I don't know. So rook e6, connecting the pawns. Now it's definitely only 50-50 for white to try to win this endgame. Yeah, this is not easy. What did I do after winning the Sanford Fellowship? Played a ton of chess, Mickelwold. Played a ton of chess. Let's see. One of the first things I did was I invited Josh Friedel to move to California. He was someone else at that time who was really interested in becoming a chess professional, and had applied for the Sanford Fellowship. I don't want to like misstate history or something like that, but I think I offered him half the stipend to just come to California and work together. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, the first thing I did was I invited him, and he did come here. And then we trained together like every day. And then we traveled around the world playing tournaments and stuff. It was super cool. Yeah, rather hard for white to win here. I think maybe the rook's maximum activity would be on some square, like one of these. Chess.com's not letting me do squares properly, but one of these squares sort of in red where you can target the isolated pawn and also maybe check the king from the side and then try and bring your king up and see if you can ever conquer one of these squares with your king. You could also play f4 to try and hold that pawn in place, rook on e5, king d4, rook h5, and that f pawn would be a way of like improving your king's prospects to slowly move up the board. Ultimately, with this one pawn advantage, you've got kind of two choices. You could try to make a passed pawn, or you could try to continue to improve your position and target some weakness of black's. Here, I don't see a great plan to make a passed pawn because our majority is like here. So to make a passed pawn, we'd run our G and F pawns into black's E pawn and their king. It doesn't look promising at all to me. Like, I don't think we win the endgame by doing that. So I would try to improve these two pieces. Chekaruski, king comes up. A rook trade! What an opportunity for Nordovik. If he remembers that he's up a pawn, then he can trade rooks and win this endgame. If he's forgotten that he's up a pawn, he might not be sure. Of course, if he moves away, he's going to allow rook f2, and you can't really let your opponent's rook into your piggy bank, can you? So he doesn't have a lot of options other than the correct move. And then his king comes into a superstar square. And now he's just winning. We're going to go to another game. Basically, he can advance his majority pawns here, threatening to play g6, h7, h8. Black's going to have to move the king over. Then his king can come in and squeeze the black king out from the side. There goes Nordovik, pushing those side pawns pretty quickly. Knows what he's doing. He's got this king and pawn ending down cold. Let's check over on Angry Narchi. Playing sort of a, whatchamacall, Philidor? Let's see if it started as a Philidor from the beginning. Yep, it did. Oh, no, wait. It started as a modern. And then into a delayed Petrov. But this position here is a standard Petrov position. That's transposed. The bishop on g5 I don't love because I don't really want to trade it for one of these black pieces here, but we'll see. c6 just makes a nice little square where the queen can tuck, but she's got to be careful. She'd rather keep that bishop defended at the moment. But this move could also allow b5 with space on the queen side, right? Okay. And there it comes a moment later, yeah. Interesting position for sure. Dabo, I have a tip for you, but it's a little bit of a secret. There's a new opening that I'm going to learn against d4 soon. But I don't want everyone to know what opening I'm going to play next. I'm going to try to whisper to you on Twitch what you can do, okay? But it's just between you and me. Okay? You won't tell anybody else that David Pruess told you that you can play this against d4 now. Okay? Do we have a deal? I don't know what the Mexican defense is, by the way, myself. So. All right. Here it is. This is a hot tip. Now, I would suggest that maybe we're even for me having at some point mistakenly thought that you were Canadian. Hey, Nordovik. Thanks for joining Friday Night Fights. It was great to see you play. All right, so black continues to expand their queenside space. This bishop should be okay on b7 or a8. Black's position's holding up. It's holding up. And normally you would want to go knight g3, f5. I was just going to say, as white plays it. But here, I was going to say, you walk into g5 maybe? Maybe white is planning to just sack it. Like this? That's crushing. Here. Here. Yeah, maybe it's playable for white. Maybe the game goes on with the sack. Maybe it's intense. Maybe black's even scared to provoke the sack. Also, you know, there's this angry looking pumpkin thing and it says angry Narche and you're like, uh-oh. I don't know if I want to mess with that. Angry Narche. With the South Korean flag, but I feel like they're originally from the Netherlands. So I'm going to see what a Narche is in Dutch. We'll see if it's like a pumpkin or something else. What the heck is a tom? Google Translate is saying that Nartje just means tom and that it's Afrikaans, not Dutch? No, it says you could also translate it from Afrikaans if it's not Dutch. In Afrikaans, it means little girl. Interesting. Well, Tom doesn't make too much sense as a translation. Maybe I should stop guessing where I think people come from. just stop completely. All right, so there's a chance for the knight to... Whoa! There's a chance for the knight to undisturbed hop to that square without this piece sacrifice coming up. Exactly, Jay Anand. It would mean angry little girl, perhaps. With that pumpkin head. What's this, like, what's going on with this rook and the fully rooked? The rook looks like it's got something in its belly. Is it spaghetti in my belly or a steak? Fully rooked somehow. I think you all can probably see that on the screen capture, right? There's something kind of gross in that rook's belly. Their rating is up 364 points. Yes. In 90 days? Beautiful. Look at that progress. Just steady. Steady. Maybe it's a new account for somebody who had a previous account, because it looks like all of that rating progress of 300 points happened in the last 1 month, actually, which is basically impossible. No one can improve that fast. It must just be that they were that strong before. Stamen, you invented the Nightorf? That's awesome, man. If you invent something like the Nightorf, it's a very, very good sign. A very good sign. Wait. The knight went to g3 and now it retreated? It thought better? What scared the knight out of here? Backing off. That I don't understand. What happened to all your anger? What happened to all your anger? Come forward like Gary. Let them feel the fetid breath of your steed. I don't know if it's fetid or fetid, but you know. Do they say how to pronounce words if you just Google them?
Fetid.
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 Although honestly, that Google Voice or whatever doesn't sound like it knows how to speak English or any language. I don't have any confidence when it sounds so much like a robot. Yeah, you're right, Stamen. A6 to avoid that annoying bishop b5 check. Right on. Is c4 playable here for white? Good question, Migmotigus. I mean, definitely white should have played knight f5, I would say. That was the point of their previous moves, right? If they were... And in this position, they couldn't play c4 because black could play g5. So they had to either come forward or do something about it. They retreated. Now the bishop has a retreat, so g5 is no longer good. And next move, yes, they could play c4 if it were white's move, but right here, Mig, black played knight b6, stopping it. Well, Janond, my count was that Gary played in 8. And Lasker played in less, like 6 or 7 or something. You want me to call up my data or something? Have you checked on it? I checked all my answers before I before the show, obviously, right? Oh, it's not about years, it's about matches. World Championship matches. Lasker was champion for 28 years, largely by not playing matches. Kasparov played a match in 84, a match in 85, a match in 87, a match in 90, a match in 93, a match in 95, and a match in 2000. Oh, you just have a theory based on the years. Yeah. Lasker was famous for not playing that many matches in his years. He still played several. I mean, he played 2 World Championship matches in 1910. He probably played several. Karpov 7, Botvinnik 7, Anand 6. But you can look this stuff up yourself, if you want to know how many times he played World Championship matches. He won 6 World Chess Championships. And then I guess he lost 1 to Capablanca. So that sounds like 7 matches. That's a lot. That's a lot. That would tie him for second most matches with Gary. Kasparov, Dabo. Botvinnik has 7 matches, just like Lasker. And Kasparov has 8. Did you see the Chess Culture game show, Dabo? I'm guessing you didn't. You should check it out. We got like a super positive response on it. I think it's really fun. All right, Mig Modicus going up in the dojo. Knight b6, bishop g3, putting some pressure on e5 with this bishop. Takes. Not yet hanging. Black could play knight c4 if they really want to. Also logical would be bishop g4, right? Challenging that knight on f3. That looks kind of annoying for white, actually, huh? Botvinnik and Karpov, Janon. Botvinnik and Karpov each played 7 matches along with Lasker, apparently. So you were right in your theory that Lasker had played a lot. Yeah, Lasker's World Championship matches, not just as some say they weren't against the best opponents. They were clearly not against the best opponents. Because he had some of the worst blowouts in World Championship history, right? Yeah, bishop g4 looks good to me. So we could take some of the pressure off e5 by attacking this knight. Right now as black, I'm a little uncomfortable that I can't really move this piece. I'm not sure how to move this piece, and my e-pawn's barely holding. So that's really encouraging me to go here. Oh yeah, of course they still count for who played the most matches on. I'm just answering somebody's question in Twitch about the quality or content of Lasker's matches. And Capablanca did beat him. And how would I summarize Capablanca's style? Capablanca's style was pretty clean and natural, I would say, first of all. Like, very good-looking positional moves. Classical openings like d4, d5, c4. No funny business. No trying too hard to make things complicated or asymmetrical. So to me, he has a very clean and naturalistic style, and very strong endgame. Because he played good, clean moves, you know, he would sort of rarely get into bad positions. Okay, Far Eastern agrees with me. Bishop g4 is just screaming at Far Eastern here as well. You know, once you see that you can't even play a move like Bishop e7 because of takes, then you start saying there is some real pressure on e5. Even if white can't take just yet, it's only a matter of time, right? And so somebody said something about queen c3, right? Jim Inner one with a good point. Like, let's say as black, we sort of temporized. Like, I don't know, played a4 or something, right? Something not too important. What could white do here? Takes, queen c3, right? 3 pieces attacking this. Sorry, the arrows are completely messed up. 3 pieces attacking here, right? Plus, the queen looks through here and you start threatening moves like bishop takes b5. So it's unpleasant. It's unpleasant. So as black here, yeah, I'm thinking, oh, and fully rooks played bishop g4. So now we can trade this knight, take the pressure off e5, mess up white's king side. Right? Exactly, Jim. You even saw the b5 idea as extra pressure there. Yeah, very good. Okay, David Justice with an interesting idea. Takes, and then takes and move this knight towards this nice f5 square. Definitely possible, right? Definitely possible. But this is okay for black. It's preferable this here than the pressure that was on e5 a moment ago, right? Because if I go rook d8 and you go knight f5 and I play knight c4, I mean, I'm in the game as black here. Right? Black's pieces are definitely competing. But yeah, it's an idea, and queen e3 was played. That's the move I expected, trying to avoid doubled pawns like this. Pawn takes e5, you would also have to calculate bishop f3, which I imagine we can do. Hey, Rita, you from Chess Kid. Great. This has to be calculated. I feel like we can calculate it, right? White takes here, attacking the queen. And black doesn't have time to do anything here. The queen can't move away and make a good threat. So white wins a pawn. And that's pretty okay for white. So yeah. So your bishop g4 d5 idea was perfectly plausible for white. Definitely. But queen e3 made sense as well. Queen e3. All right, let's see what black can do now. Is there any possibility here tactically? Rook's opposite the queen. The queen's busy here. Queen's busy there. Daniil Dubov playing the Najdorf. Enrico thinks Cap is the greatest. Anand thinks Magnus is the greatest. They're both mistaken, but of course, Kappa and Magnus, great players. So, what can black come up with? Mig Modicus says f5 might be interesting. That's a fiery move, Mig. I hadn't thought of that one just yet. D5 is probably not amazing because this bishop kind of ties up our stuff on that diagonal, right? You didn't say that? It says Mig Modicus says f5 looks a bit problematic. Oh, sorry. Jim wanted f5, and you think it's problematic for black, so you're worried for black about f5. Gotcha. Oh, yeah, I totally did, Janon. I totally did. Philidor, the greatest player of all time. It's hard to compare players across generations, so I can understand other people not realizing that Philidor was the greatest player of all time. It's not easy to see across generations. You know, it's also hard to compare, let's say, Morphy with a 20th century player. And it would be hard to compare somebody like Botvinnik with Magnus, although less difficult, because by the time of Botvinnik, you know, there was strong opposition, there were professional players. You can already make some points of comparison. But comparing players pre-1900 with players from after 1950 is pretty hard to do, right? But it should be very easy to compare Magnus and Gary. And that's enough to see that Magnus is not the greatest of all time. Right? Because they're, you know, nearly consecutive. It's pretty easy to see. So I could understand somebody thinking that Kasparov is the greatest of all time, or that Bobby Fischer is the greatest of all time, or that Paul Morphy is the greatest of all time. I could understand that versus Philidor. But I can't understand anybody thinking Magnus is the greatest of all time until he's been number one as long as Gary had, right? Magnus would have to be number one for another, you know, maybe 4 years at this point. He's starting to get there, but not playing in the World Championship matches kind of hurts it a little bit as well, right? Like, he's number one because he doesn't really play any classical games, right? I don't know if that counts. Most underrated player of all time? Between Magnus and Gary, they're both very highly rated. Okay, so black did this. I didn't see, like, the clear answer for black here. Even though I felt like maybe there's something. But nothing I looked at was really convincing. So let's just see what black does. They trade, bring the knight into the game. What's the follow-up? Right, Stamen's not liking the queen here, right? It's definitely a problem for black. No easy answer here. Yeah, you're right, Rita. If knight c4, white's definitely intending to trade it. Right? And you do get an open file, so that's totally a reasonable option. I totally defend his choice, Janon, to not play the World Championships. I approve of that choice. I've defended it on every podcast against Jesse. For 2 years now, it's probably come up 5 to 10 times that I've had to defend Magnus's choice against Jesse. It's his life, and he can decide what he wants to do with it, right? But Kasparov chose to spend his life until age, 41? Trying to be the best chess player in the world, play all the top tournaments, play the World Championship match. So if Magnus doesn't do that, then it makes Kasparov the greatest chess player of all time. It might it might still make Magnus the best person at, life balance among world champions or something like that, But which is probably better than being the greatest chess player of all time, right? It's probably better to be like a great chess player who also had great life balance. Magnus did just get married, Hockey Chess Dude, that's for sure. So Jim is still saying that this move f5 might be good. So should we have a quick look at f5 in this position? If pawn takes pawn, what's the basic plan here? Yeah, if black's not going to do anything amazing, by the way, Meg, it is weird that the knight went to g5, right? So if black takes here, queen here. c5, hitting the queen. She could go to a lot of different places. Let's say she goes here. We trap the bishop, goes here, takes here, hits the knight, takes here. Black wins. Still winning the piece, even with this trick. You guys want to do e4 instead? Sure, we can do e4 instead. This move seems to be winning, so this move might be simpler. Attack the bishop with this option here, so that if black plays something like h4, you can take, and they don't have time to take your knight. So if you go e4, it doesn't really have anywhere to escape, right? Closest white has to a complicated move is knight f4, pawn takes here, queen here, 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 threatening knight g6. There's this move as a defense. Maybe here attacking the rook. And if rook here, d2 wins. And if the rook moves somewhere, knight d7. Something like this. Completely winning for black. This looks winning for black. This idea, e4 here. So if black plays f5, whoops, sorry. Black plays f5, white should not take it. Maybe you should take here. Starting to open this diagonal a little bit, right? Takes away some of white's options. Because then if black takes, you can come here and there's no longer e4. The time control is 45 minutes to start with, Joseph, plus a 30-second increment for these players. So if white takes here, then black might need to try something like taking on e4, right? And then if white takes and takes and takes, the rook's been developed and white's looking really good here, right? Really good. It's probably still complicated. It might still be complicated, but actually the queen's got to keep that knight defended. Yeah. Looks rough. Does pawn takes e4 any better? Yeah, because his bishop is stuck. So we gotta just try this. This. Now, I'm seeing like queen d3, knight b2, queen f4, d e5. It's not looking super clear for white here. Yeah, it feels like to some extent anything could happen with this line. Okay, Jay. Maybe tell your opponent in chat so they know. Just it's not required, but it's just an extra politeness that we could employ. This knight c4 is pretty nice here. So we don't see anything that refutes f5. Oh my gosh, Fully Rook just played f5 too. So they had their reasons for playing knight g5, folks. Recall, people said knight g5, it's a little bit weird unless it does something immediate. Man. No, I understand you're not going to flag, Jay. I'm just saying it's, it could be polite to tell them. Not important. It was just a little thought I had. Dang, knight g5. And now f5. Looks playable for black according to our latest calculations or considerations. Fantastic, Fully Rooked. Fantastic. Yeah, it's a weird position statement. For a while, both players were a little bit cramped, right? Or congested. So it felt a little bit weird. So you were thinking around here, maybe, to play queen c3 first, right? Instead of bishop g3. Just getting a little more space for the pieces and trying to make this bishop takes b5 threat. Right? I guess the important question is, how is black going to respond, and is it good or bad for white, right? Because an obvious response for black would be b4, but maybe that's bad for black because then they don't have knight c4. Maybe they want the pawn here. If b4 is bad for black, then that makes this move seem better. There's also knight a4, normally not something black wants to do, but here may be annoying for white. Look at this, queen a3, d5. That's a problem. And I would say, of course, quote unquote, queen d2 is a problem because of this, right? So then if we have to go queen b3, bishop here. It's messy. I mean, white can still play d5 or c4. It's not like white's been completely refuted or anything. Actually, c4, knight b6 doesn't look very good. It may look like I'm playing stupid moves for black. You're like, why do these moves work? Knight a4, knight b6. But white's just, moved back and forth in that time, and now we're just going after this square here with everything. There is d5, but I've calculated that pawn c4 is perfectly good for black. So bishop e6 looks decent. This looks like the critical move. And then I think black maybe plays knight c5 before doing any of this. Hitting the queen while this pawn here is not yet. Jeez, come on, chess.com. Hitting the queen while the b5 pawn's not yet. Chess.com. Before we trade on d5, you see? I want to attack the queen first. And then if she goes somewhere like this, I'm going to maybe trade, and then drop back defending the pawn. Pretty comfortable position for black, although also maybe playable for white. But white's got to watch out for e4. They've got to watch out for g5, f5. I sort of instinctively feel good about black's position here. I didn't take this pawn here, by the way, because my calculation was bishop h7 check, king recaptures, rook d5. So that's why I didn't go for winning the pawn. I just sort of backed up and thought black was doing okay. So queen c3 is a very interesting move here, Stamen. But I think knight a4 probably gives black an okay game. I would have to calculate longer to be sure. But instinctively, to me, looking at a few lines here, it looks basically appropriate for black. Like it should be doing enough. There should be enough tactical juice here for black, not enough good squares for the queen to uncongest herself, right? And of course, you're right to want to uncongest. I think a lot of us would have been sensitive to the same factor here, that as white or as black, we want to get a little uncongested. But that's part of being congested. Sometimes you can't get out, Sometimes you don't have enough squares. So the game went with bishop g3, bishop g4, queen e3, takes, knight comes out, f5. White has now taken on e5, and here we expect fe4 for black, right? Was that the best we found? Yeah. Very important. fe4, bishop e4, knight c4. I didn't even really expect this to work out for black. My instincts were slightly against this working out for black. But now that I've looked at it for a little bit, I've changed my instincts and my assessment. fe4 from fully rooked. Playing with fire. Giving this d6 pawn, which white can take. And the queen's going to have to stay on the knight. So she's going to go to b7 or d8. And then this piece will be trapped because the e-pawn will be defended. And the story will be even more complicated than that, but that's sort of the beginning of the story. That's where it starts. So black thought a really long time on f5. This is very, very advanced. Thought a long time on f5, and after d-e5, captured on e4 relatively quickly. 60 seconds exactly, or 59.8 or something. It feels bad for black, Dabo. Yeah, my instinct was this wouldn't work. But actually, I tried out a few moves, and then I thought it does work. So, there's a chance for me to learn a little something, recalibrate my instinct a little bit around these little threats and skirmishings here. As the two players fight out of these congested positions, as Stamen called them. Let's go a few moves further and see what happens. Okay, it could be Horizon, yeah. So do you see a candidate other than bishop takes e4 here? I don't really. But I don't know at what point you want to stop and look harder. What does your instinct tell you? Is this the point where white's got some surprising move? Because we could definitely try pawn takes pawn. We could just throw it on the board and then see if anything comes to mind. MiG is so stubborn they think that this f5, fe4 could have also been accomplished with the knight on f6 instead of g5. I don't mean to give you a hard time, MiG, friend. But yeah, that is a stubborn position, right? Since the knight on f6 would have blocked the pawn on f7. Dabo wants to try knight f4 somewhere. Shoot, maybe I'm not getting the right position. Okay, yeah, okay. Here's probably what Dabo's thinking. Takes, and then knight f4. Oh, I had my queen on b7, right? But here, knight f4, maybe there would have been something like this. No, I got enough pieces. Okay, so anyway, let's go queen b7. Knight f4. Pawn takes. And let's see what Dabo's got in mind here. There is a chance, Jim. Yeah, we could calculate that. Okay, so it's this kind of sack. Similar to what I tried once before with the idea of knight to g6. But this time, white's got this passed pawn, which is more dangerous than the last time I did this. Here I kind of want to take first. I want to make sure I've got this pawn to distract white a little bit. White's got two choices, c1 and e1. Position's definitely a little bit bonkers. The material count is black has queen and knight against two rooks. So the onus is on white to do something like juicy, right? If somehow the position got less bonkers, black would eventually be winning, right? So white has the onus on them to come up with some juice. I'm again going to bring my queen here to try and keep this knight from getting into these squares. And I'm probably threatening queen takes rook. Rook takes queen, c1 equals queen, checkmate. Probably. Maybe not, but imagining that's a little bit of a threat. If d7, the knight is happy to come here. I thought of the move h4 here for white, for example, unback-ranking the king. But, I mean, oddly, one thing black could do is just take the rook anyway, right? And lead the knight here. That looks winning. So maybe we should go rook b8. Think about doubling. You know, the rook's on the back rank thinking about the government. Knight d7, knight d5. Everything feels okay to me. I don't truly feel the danger, I guess. Yeah, here it starts to clarify for black, so we'll go back and try something else. Has white moved yet after fe4? They've taken on d6, and black played queen b7 in 4 seconds. So fully rook showing some real professionalism here of sort of looking ahead and planning a sequence, thinking a long time on a key move, predicting some plausible moves, and being ready for them. Queen d7 looked even more clear, says Jim Inner One. Yeah, queen d7 looks at least as good. I agree with you. Good point. So this is the position. Angry Narchi's bishop is probably a little upset about what's going on here, and white needs some impactful moves. I mean, potentially white could lose a piece and still we have a complicated game with this pawn on d6. So there's a lot of possibilities still here. If we're truly losing a piece here, I'm tempted to sack the bishop for that pawn and then move the knight. Or even then play h4 maybe first. I don't know. But somehow or other black should be able to handle the position. All their pieces are fighting and they're going to be up a piece. So Yeah, we could start with h4 here. That was one move I thought of, and I was thinking takes, and the knight would try to come somewhere in the middle instead of retreating, although there's no reason that you couldn't play knight f7 and say, hey, I'm still up a piece. Yeah. Anybody learn something really interesting, surprising, or super cool this week that you want to share with me? Something that I might not know, or that other people in chat might not know? You've got a coworker who feeds birds. Chess or anything, hockey chess dude. If it's about chess, unfortunately, there's a good chance that I'll already know it, but someone else in chat might find it really cool. Far Eastern, you still have trouble managing your time. Yeah. Knight takes, bishop takes pawn, and the knight isn't hanging. You've got a counter to the Caro. Okay. And the knight is hanging. Knight takes bishop, takes pawn, and the knight is hanging. I can't follow the variations, Stamen. Sorry. Looks like all of you have been. Looks like all of you have been learning chess this week. That's a weird coincidence, though, that at Dabo's work they asked something interesting that you've learned this week, and then it came to me as well. The Alien Gambit. I don't know what the Alien Gambit is, Jim. Oh, Depressoir, you were in the lower section and you beat somebody too badly? Well, maybe you can give them a piece of advice or something. Okay, Stamen's saying d7. Knight takes d7. Bishop takes. Bishop takes. And you were thinking that this was undefended at the end? The Alien Gambit. Yeah. I'm going to see if Google knows what the Alien Gambit is. It's something in the Carl Khan. Knight c3, de4, knight e4, knight f6, knight g5. Popularized by celebrities like Witty Alien, Levi Rosman, and Eric Rosen. It's a dangerous but unsound line. And then if h6, you take on f7, huh? Yeah, that doesn't look very good. That doesn't look very good. Oh, I like your suggestion, David Justice. There's a chessable course on that opening? Okay, so here's David Justice's suggestion. You sack the bishop here, then hit them with this check here. Idea of playing queen b5. Right? And if black just moves over, then this is a fairly ideal scenario for white, right? 3 pawns against the piece, if we're counting correctly. And one of them's pretty monstrous, and you could, if you could get that C pawn up there, you'd have a great position. So after queen b3, David Justice thought maybe black would try knight c4 to defend the b5 pawn, right? And then a4, trying to break up this structure. And that's not the only move. Knight c3 or knight d4 also hit that same structure very plausibly. But I think you would play a4 first. But yeah, you'd have to calculate all 3 of them, honestly. So I would say that's not even desperation, David Justice. I think that I feel like you've maybe come up with the most realistic, most plausible practical chance for white here, actually. Yeah. What's up? Do you need something from me? Okay. All right. Oh, h6, knight e6, Dabo, that makes sense. The thing I saw online said h6, knight f7, but honestly, knight e6 is often better than knight f7. You don't have enough pawns anyway, so at least stuff the opponent's position up with their own pawns blocking their development. Anyway, it's a pretty... Well, it's an obviously not good idea, right? It's, the kind of thing that I was interested in when I was a beginner. What was the move order again? Alien Gambit. Is it black playing knight d7? No, black's playing knight f6. Oh my god. So is it not even black playing knight d7 blocking their bishop as happens? It's knight f6 where you need to trade on f6 to go knight g5 there. And then if black goes bishop f5, would you still sack on f7? I don't think black should play h6 unless they're just trying to meme with you. Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. You can't go knight e6 because the bishop's still on c8. Games are all right. Filet gefilte fish. This one here, white's been thinking a while because black sort of trapped this bishop, but it's very, very complicated. The best we see is bishop b5, queen b3, and then really messy. Really messy. Oh yeah, one game is enough for a classical tournament, Jay. You don't need to play multiple games in a row in these Friday night fights. Just one game is fine. You know? Take your time. Take your time and play one game. You're not supposed to play 4 games. Four games should take you like 12 hours at this time control. Or maybe 8 hours in the under 1600. Narchi's going to have to make a choice here, getting pretty low on time here. Here's another position. Looks like white's got rook and bishop against a queen. And with black having extra pawns, it's just not going to be sufficient at all. Yeah. Maybe black's going to try something like this to set up mating patterns against white's king. Plus f5, f4 would actually be annoying for this bishop too. Yeah, f5 looks very good. Not obligatory, but anyway, we're going to go back to our game, which is more tense than that. Oh, Narchi's getting too low on time. I mean, it's hard to come up with bishop b5, queen b3. But normally here, I think like a basic understanding would be that you want to trade your bishop for their center pawn, right? Normally you'd value the center pawn the highest. But here somehow, because this pawn is isolated and the knight is weirdly placed here to defend it, I'd rather get one queenside pawn even if I didn't see queen b3, which was a great find by David Justice, which I hadn't seen. But even without finding queen b3, my instinct would be to trade that pawn off the board, not this one, and then play something like knight c3 here. Hey, thanks, Jim. You had some great suggestions, so thanks for joining us and chatting with us. And we'll see you another time. And you're correct. I'm not trying to impress anyone. I'm not, I think I'm aware that I couldn't impress someone even if I wanted to. But even if I could, I would not choose to. Even if I could, I would not choose to, because that's not the point. The point is to give something of value to others. Yeah, that was very kind, transcriptionist. I appreciated that. Sorry to hear that it might be rare, but nice to hear nonetheless. So 4 minutes for Narchi. Ay, ay, ay. That's brutal. That's brutal. I guess they're just kind of spinning out here. And maybe feeling desperate and not realizing how close it is. Or maybe the opposite. They realize how close they are to having enough. And they just can't believe that their bishop's really trapped. And they're like looking for how to get something out of this pawn. But actually the answer is surprisingly patient, folks. It's you take this, you try and win this pawn, and you leave this pawn here because this bishop is trapped by it. You don't try and push d7 too fast. You try to get this pawn, and you can siege it with a4 and knight d4 or knight c3 as needed if black goes knight to c4. And someone said black could also just give the pawn and rearrange the queen like this and blockade the pawn. And now your goal is basically to get this pawn here up to c5. If you can do that, you're totally in the game, right? Seems quite clear to me. So, very plausible, I think, the position. Is it doing a thing where it's not showing me what Narchi has played? Oh my god, I just had the thought. Maybe chess.com is not showing me moves. Maybe the whole game's been played while it just didn't even show me any repeats. And now it's just spinning out. Can't even load anything. Sometimes I forget. You know, things are working. You forget that they could not work, right? Oh, look at that. Come on, chess.com. Hey, folks, the compensation for us, I mean, it's painful that we didn't get to watch it, but Narchi found this and took that other pawn and just kept playing. Uh-oh, d7 too soon? Knight d7. Queen here. Wasn't there queen takes d7? Winning back the piece? With a pawn up endgame? Ah! Looks like this move was played in 4 seconds. Ah! Shoot, that was so close. I mean, my instinct was not to play d7 here. Oh, but the bishop's attacking the rook. That's why d7 is played, because if you just go rook d8, then bishop here, right? And white's just all over the place. Because my instinct in this position was you play c4, you know, and then whatever they do with their knight, you just say sure. You know, and maybe even slow move b3 just to keep the rook out. And, you know, we're just playing with three extra pawns against a knight. Sure, it's just a game. It's fine. But actually, this d7 move was strong because there's this moment here. And they played it the moment black played rook b8. But somehow they didn't calculate knight d7. And once it got played, they just got confused. This queen trade saves the knight and the rook in one move. And this was the moment to just take here and... yeah. I think black just saves the endgame despite white's extra pawns because the rook immediately gets in here and white's actually not coordinated to defend any of that stuff, but white's definitely not worse. I mean, they're totally fine. So, queen b7, and now they're just going to suffer in this endgame, right? 2 pawns against a knight, but they're not particularly strong pawns at the moment. All the black pieces can be used. So probably with really good play from black, it's winning. That said, I mean, you just got to do your best with it because the truth is it's not easy to play this endgame as black. It's not easy to win in any endgame with a knight against 2 pawns. It's a pretty high skill level endeavor. In endgames, knights are not, you know, are not so much better than 2 pawns, basically, right? Because in endgames, the value of a knight goes down and the value of a pawn goes up. So a knight is just not that much better than 2 pawns, and it's very tricky to show the knight superiority. You can draw, you can lose. It only takes a couple subtle mistakes. It doesn't have to be something really, you know, blunderous or obvious. Did I eat dinner with the kids tonight? Yes. Okay, I did. My idea is D. Pruess, Janon. On Chess.com and Lee Chess and anywhere else, I think. All right, Norby, you got 2 good endgames in one night? That's fun. Do you guys think that it's missing moves? I feel like it's, again, not showing me the moves probably, right? Mig Modicus, we've recently recovered the Chess.com embed. So it's not really 1,000 viewers. Chess.com is embedding our stream on 1,000 random web pages on the Chess.com website. Yeah. And you've probably never seen that before because you've just been around for a couple months here in the dojo. And we are a Chess.com partner streamer, which means we never show Lee Chess, their competitor, on on our streams. We basically always use chess.com for playing or showing games or things like that. But about 6 or 7 months ago or something like that, our account got disconnected somehow, and we didn't know why. And so we've had, it's shown the real 50 to 100 viewers at a time for the last 6 months or something like that. And earlier this week, it got fixed. So now we've got 1,000 fake viewers to make us seem like a really hot stream, so that other people clicking around might join the stream. I guess that's the idea. And hey, Moscow. And another thing about that MIG is they pass it around between different chess.com streamers. So you'll see it like go plus 1,000, minus 1,000. It'll sort of bounce around. I don't know the charity event you're referring to, Jay. Sorry. I actually, myself, don't really use Lichess. Not because of the chess.com partnership thing. I just, was always used to using chess.com, so I stuck with it. Oh, you got a plan for me, Meg, to improve my content? Just screams or is hot? Maybe screaming a lot makes you hotter. Oh, that's great, Little Eagle. I'm glad that I got to watch a game of yours and give you some hopefully useful comments. Communism can be good at times. Yeah, for sure, Moscow. I probably would love Lichess if I got used to using it. I definitely like the, making things free concept. Mountain Dave and the Chess Cave. Oh, it's just not worth it to me, Dabo, I honestly kind of like being myself. I'm not trying to claim it's better than being someone else necessarily, but I'm more or less satisfied with it. If I wanted to be really different, I would probably have already changed myself in that direction. So I feel like it's again not showing us the moves on this game, right? That's really annoying. Or maybe this is right. Yeah, Moscow. Monopoly is generally not good for anybody. It's not even good for chess.com. And I'm just looking with a blank stare. I could definitely do a blank stare easily, Dabo. I am often tired. I think it was last night. So tired, I don't know for sure if it was last night, but I think it was last night. I spent the night with my baby, who was just, too pumped about life to sleep. And I only slept this morning for about 2 hours while my partner mercifully made the breakfasts and took the kids to school. So I could definitely do a blank stare if that would be good for some reason. But you know what? I'm actually completely opposed to shorts. So I don't have anything to do with the chess.com shorts. They sometimes use footage of me, but I have nothing to do with it. I don't make any comments about the shorts. I voted that we don't publish shorts, etc. Yeah, I'm just making the distinction, Charles Hamilton. There's some babies that like cry at night and that keeps their parents up. My daughter does not cry at night. She's just like, me up? Me go? Me out? My go, go, go. So, it's not super unpleasant. But I have been sort of wrecked today. Why am I against short form videos, Dabo? Because I feel there's so much quick short stuff out there that my responsibility is to help people to maintain, obviously with whatever small thing that I do and whatever small reach my stream might have, but my goal is to inspire people to maintain their longer attention spans, to work on thinking deeply about things. And I understand there is a place for multitasking, which I'm bad at, and thinking quickly, which I'm not particularly good at. And I see the titles of all these shorts, appearing on my YouTube all the time, and I understand why people would click on them. It sounds really exciting. It really does. I see this stuff and they're like, you won't believe what Eminem really thinks of Jay-Z or something like that, right? Or, what this baby turtle can do is simply incredible. No, I mean, who wouldn't want to know? I don't think there's anyone who there's a lot of diversity in people. I think most people are interested in those things, right? They're like, wait, what do Eminem and Jay-Z think of each other? Or what incredible things can baby turtles do that I didn't know they could do? I understand that that's really interesting and that there's a place for it. I understand it's amazing that right now you could be sitting at your home and learning things about baby turtles that 20 years ago you'd have basically no way to learn, right? You'd have to go take a PhD program in animal biology, right? Or marine biology or something. The fact that I could just click around on YouTube and learn insane things. I understand that there's a positive to it. I really do. I'm not just a grouch. I understand it's amazing. But I do think that one of the biggest challenges for humanity coming up, and obviously there's a long list, so we could argue about what's the biggest or not the biggest, or what's the second biggest or whatever. But I think a major challenge coming up for us is attention spans. We can't always only be in that mode of give me something amazing every 60 seconds, or I'm bored and tuning out and I can't go any deeper into anything. Right? We need to be able to sit in boredom. We need to be able, at times, right? There's a value to both. So we need to be able to sit in boredom. We need to be able to think deeply on a problem. We need to hit a point where you're like, oh man, I can't think about this anymore. And then we have to push through it and keep thinking about it. So let's just say that's my role, my role is to try and preserve that. You've been using a toilet wrong your whole life. Yeah. So, how are things going here? We had a really long think there from Black after h3. And, I found the move bishop b4 slightly tempting, poking at the rook. But Black just decided, calm, let's bring the bishop to a better square. White takes the king off this diagonal and closer to defending some squares in the center. That's a good move from white. Good, clean move. Yeah, Fried Chicken's like, no, really, there is a video like that out there. There probably is a video like that out there. Yeah, Mig, it's a commitment. It's a commitment doing this, you know. It's a commitment, and I will say there are times where I'm like, oh, maybe I should like maybe I'd rather, you know, read my book and go to sleep. But and for the most part, I think, you know, people, if somebody feels like that, they should do it. You know, I don't spend a lot of time like faking being into things. You know, I don't do a lot of things I don't want to do and pretend I want to do them. But there are also times where it's nice to have like a commitment and just follow through on it, right? So I'm following through on a commitment here. All right, so I like this move, king f1. Nice clean move from white, keeping f2, e2, e1 defended. Good square for the king, not on the diagonal with the bishop. And an important part of winning or losing these endgame positions here is having nice clean moves in this phase of the game. But after knight e5, knight c3 may have been a major mistake because of bishop b4, right? Let's dig into that. Bishop b4, rook e3, I guess, is the only move. And then there's not really a follow-up for black, actually. Not so bad. I mean, we can go after the c file, right? So you could play a move like rook here, knight here, get greedy about the c pawn, check here, f4, and we've maybe burned too much of our juice for one little pawn. Yeah, I understand the sentiment, Rita, but I generally don't think so myself. I'm kind of with Fried Chicken on that. I think almost always it'd be better to have a complete video than something that seems like genius but is really short. So bishop b4 is not all that interesting. So the game goes on. And white looks to trade that bishop. Interesting. White even looking for a trade themselves here. Because this piece is good. We're going to improve the rook. Black might play bishop b4 here in response to bishop d6. 11 minutes for white, 8 minutes for black. We're definitely going to see their endgame skills here. Ash asked if I could win this endgame with white against a 1500 player. The answer is sometimes. Not 100% of the time. But probably a very, very good portion of the time. Hey, bye, Jay. Have a great day. I think against a 1500, I would not lose very often with white. So the reason I'm answering Ash's question, by the way, folks, is not because Ash set me up to brag about my skills or something, but because I think it's actually useful to think in terms of how winning is this position, right? Because sometimes you see stuff like this and you're like, oh, one side's up a piece, it's a win, whatever, it's not interesting from here on out. Especially, I think, you know, I don't think players around 1,000 would take this kind of thing for granted, but often players just starting to really get their skills and feel themselves, you know, in the 1,400 to 1,600 range or so, they might think like, oh, you're up a piece, like, you got it. And actually, I would say this is, it's actually still very, very tense, this kind of an endgame. So black did go bishop b4, yeah. With the idea of threatening the knight, and this is a very fine move, because if white takes, black can take with the pawn, and this pawn hurts both of those pawns. Do you see that? So it's making it easier for black to try and target those pawns with a rook on c8 or a8. What student, Dabo? And you know, Fried Chicken, it's possible that Rita B knows better than us, right? We have to keep that possibility in mind. We have some wisdom, but Rita B might know how to use sites like YouTube and stuff better than us as a super young person. Young people often have some knowledges and insights and stuff. Oh, they had coaches for the PogChamps? I mean, I know somebody from PogChamps was cheating. I just don't know whether there was, who or what was teaching. Yeah. Keep in mind it's possible, let's just say. I mean, it's something that stuck with me from something Shanklin told me, Fried Chicken, is he said, like, a lot of GMs, established GMs, disregard how the younger generation are training, right? But that he himself, like, often will train with young players, even 200-300 points below him. And obviously there's things that Sam can teach them. But he says, like, he's always looking to learn something himself from those situations, because the younger people, they always have some new ideas about how to train, new uses of chess learning tools and technology and stuff like that. There's always something new for him too. Yeah. To pick up. So reminds me to pay attention. So knight b4, going after that c pawn. I haven't kept up the last couple moves either, Moscow. I do, Meg, yeah. So Rita's watching things that are good enough that you want to rewatch it and take notes as part of how you watch it. So Rita's taking a short and slowing it down, actually, right? She's taking a video that might be 2 minutes long and maybe spending, 6 or 10 minutes on it. Claw, I don't know if I can give a very good, there was sort of a tactical explosion in the middle of the board, Claw. And White had even 3 pawns for the piece at some point, so it was really, really tight. But then they lost a pawn playing a winning tactic that they didn't quite get right. Or not a winning tactic. They lost the pawn playing a tactic that should have won them back their piece. They didn't follow through on it correctly. So now they're defending an endgame with 2 pawns against a knight, which is a bit tough, but, not the end of the world as they try to hold the creaky c file. If black comes to c8, it'll break, but white will get the e-pawn. Which opening would I recommend against d4? You love the winnower. You love Najdorf positions. You can't find anything you love against d4. What have you already played, Depressoir? And what is a Depressoir? Oh, sorry, Meg asked about my other hobbies. My biggest other hobby right now, Meg, is probably writing raps. Like you might be acquainted with the Welcome to the Dojo song, because Jesse sometimes plays that at the start of a show. That's a song I wrote for the Chess Dojo and sang and rapped it. I can't sing, So I do that. In fact, 2 nights ago, Wednesday night, I performed a rap in public for the second time in my life. I also like reading books if I get a chance to. And I like... Oh, and I swim a lot right now. My goal is to work out Monday through Friday when the kids are in school. But I often miss a day. So I swim. Oh, and you've played Spirit Island, Claude. Nice. Yeah. We've got a few games here. I mean, as a parent, you know, hobbies, like, you don't have a lot of time for them. But maybe you can see that we've got some games here. You might recognize Ticket to Ride over here. Spirit Island right here that Claude's just saying was a good recommendation. Enjoyed that. Splendor is a fun game for kids. We got Code Names. Down here there's Azul. Nice game. Played that at the last game night here. And today one of my kids learned Sequence. So with limited time, I have tried to start, this is another example of like a commitment, I have tried to start a once a month game night for my friends. And there are times where, you know, game night comes around and maybe I'm tired and want to sleep, but still try to hold it once a month. I love table tennis. Yes, I've maybe played it once this year, but I love it. There are a million things I would love to do. And when I have more time, maybe I'll do more of them. But right now, I probably spend the most time... Yeah, Splendor is actually well designed. What I spend the most time on right now of any hobby, though, is probably this rap writing, I would say. Although I also have this 1,300-page book from the library I'm trying to read, so maybe this week I'll spend more time reading than writing. A depressoir is a position in which you're suffering. So you enjoy having bad positions, depressoir. You like the winnower, that makes sense. So what would I recommend against d4? I mean, the most miserable opening against d4 is probably the Benoni, and it's called Son of Sorrow, so it matches your name. And you love Catan, which is one of the most suffering games there is. So yeah, maybe you should take up the Benoni. That'll lead to some suffering. So quick question. Let's make sure everybody's awake, you know, and engaged in thinking themselves. So we've got this position. I mentioned that if Rook c8 was played, the c file would break, but black would give up the e file. This does happen, right? So the e pawn goes, the c pawn goes. I just want everybody's opinion. Does this favor black or white? Black initiates it with Rook c8, right? So do you feel that this has helped black or white? That's all I want to hear. Just your opinion, a judgment, right? A kind of comparative evaluation. Do you feel like black should have gone for Rook c8 in the sense that is this position now better than what they had before? Or worse than what they had before? That was on my to-do list, Claude, to go to the mechanics and talk about analyzing one's own games and show off the book. And yeah, I don't know if I'm going to get to it before the summer at this rate. Just so many things to do. Rafflefish, you can just go to the Chess Dojo Club. We do this every Friday. And you have to be a member of the Chess.com club, because that's how Chess.com pairs its tournaments. And then you can just join. There's just, you'll see like a join button here, or these also operate as links, the names of the tournaments. All right, so we've got several people saying this seems to help black, which is interesting. My feeling is it's really, even just this one pawn trade, it feels like it's simplifying things for white here to me. Rook a4, great. Now, my opinion might have been slightly different against rook c2, which felt a lot stronger. Maybe rook c2 would have totally changed the feeling here. a3 looks forced. Knight d3 is going to be the critical move. And then if rook e2, black's got this. Yeah. If black had to trade like this, even with knight c1, I'm not sure that this would work, because white's king gets into the game first. If white's king can get to that a pawn, tricky. This kind of an endgame, just a single pawn against the knight. If it's an outside rook pawn, looks pretty tough for black. But rook c2, a3, knight d3, rook e2, there's this move, ending the game. So knight d3 looks very strong. And white can't defend this square, huh? So white has to do something like rook here, give the pawn. Rook f5. Black should be more or less winning here. So maybe the decision to go to c8 was fine as long as black takes on c2 with the rook. But the knight takes puts the whole game in question, I think. g3. I expected the king to come rushing out. Pyrenees Gambit, I haven't heard of, Joe Bloor. There's no cheat code statement. Yeah, it doesn't have like a thing like the square with a king and pawn ending. Statement's asking about positions like this. Is there any way to just rule of thumb whether or not the knight can deal with the a pawn? I guess, Statement, the rule of thumb is the knight can't deal with the a pawn. If it were a b pawn, the knight could, probably. With a rook pawn, if you haven't calculated anything, assume the knight can't deal with it. Okay? But if you have to calculate it, it's actually tricky to calculate how the knight and the king jostle for position. Because the king's going to try and box out the knight, right? Like, keep the knight from getting to the square it needs to get to. So, yeah. Actually, here I see a way for black to get back in time with this surprising move. The point is against a4, you can catch the pawn and just trade for it. That endgame might even be winning that king and pawn ending. Because the black king can get to h2, white can go king f2, g5, king f3, h5. h4, g4. Not GH. G3, G4. G4, H4, King F3, King H3. King F2, G4. Then H4. King H1, King F1, King H2, King F2. Oh, king h1, king f1, g3. King h1, king g3, king g1. King f4, king g2. Yeah, it looks like black wins that endgame. And so otherwise you could play like this, 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 and the knight comes around here and still covers a4. Okay, so here we are. White's not getting the king into the action. Black does only have 4 minutes left to handle this still tricky endgame. Bravo to both players for an epic fight so far. I feel like if White had brought the king out instead of wasting 3 tempi, let me say, I don't think these moves help White's position at all. My instinct here is that this endgame here is fine for White if they just bring the king out. Even rook c4, I don't know if Black's better. Though my instinct is not to break up my pawn pair like that. I'm thinking king e2, etc. Should be fine for White. So anyway, White plays these moves on the king side, goes back and forth. Black's still going to have to try and find a way to win this without much time on the clock, but Black's being given free time to get the king into great position, right? And White's is still here, so it feels like it is drifting back to a winning position for Black, though still very hard to handle. There's a couple important pattern statement in terms of how a king tries to fight against a knight. So let me just mention 1 or 2 things for you in this kind of a position. Let's go like here. So if a knight goes to a square like here, generally the best square to be on is b5. That relation keeps the knight from coming closer. And if the knight tries to come around you, it's a very, very crummy low route around you. Because even here, the knight is kind of dominated by the king partly, and it's not able to use any checks tactically to make progress in its position, to double attack a king and a pawn or something like that. So that's the ideal position for a king against a knight. And the second best position for a king against a knight is this one, 2 steps in between, because you're covering 2 of the knight's moves, and its other moves are less directly getting to you and need to really go around you a longer route. So that basic, like how these pieces relate, is very important. And often, instead of going directly towards you, this move will be worse for Black than going further away, but the plan is to, sort of come under a little bit more. Here it doesn't seem to help much, but actually, knight d6 is kind of an improvement here, right? Compared to the options from d3. So sometimes you actually take a further angle just to avoid getting jammed up like this by the king. Because the knight is faster than the king, so sometimes it can start running around further away around from the beginning instead of trying to take a beeline towards where it wants to stop the pawn, because the beeline is going to get it stopped short by the king. All right, let's follow their game. Black king comes up. Black knight cuts this rook off, and now if you let Black just sort of advance the king, it looks pretty hopeless, so White's likely to try a3. They do. Knight c6 overprotects the pawn and working on preventing b4. Yeah, Rita B. The Black knight, the more it can slow down that a pawn, the Black king's goal is going to g2, right? And trying to trade the knight for the a pawn. All right, so what is White to do? Well, I mean, bring the king up. If White goes b4 at this point, right, it seems like Black can just deal with the pawn, but does the move rook a6 win? Not win for white. It saves white, right? And so then the other move would be this. And again, rook here, and you can't take this with any piece. So b4 might be surprisingly playable here because black can never go rook b5, rook a6. You go b4 and trade one of black's remaining pawns, right? Black's running out of enough material to win the game with. How did the dojo start? We actually talked about it on a recent video, Moscow, so maybe I should send you that. We were doing this episode of Dojo Talks because it was episode 150. We talked about how the dojo started, and I actually read on stream like the earliest emails of Jesse, Kostya, and I together talking about it. So here, it's in that episode. Rook d4. Okay, so for the moment, white is happy to just sort of harry black back and forth, move around, wait for black to find progress. But I cannot stress enough that it would be better for white to have the king in a better position. Favorite Indian youngster? Itachi, for whatever reason, I root the hardest for Gukesh, though I'm also a fan of Aragaisis and Prague Nanandas. So I think a lot of them are great. Probably there will be a few more great ones in a couple more years. But I really, really, really love the personality and attitude of Gukesh, Aragaisi, and Prague. They seem like super good people. Okay, Moscow. Important question at this point is rook f3. That's probably what fully rooked is investing their time in, right? Going after this. White has maybe the option of rook a4 in response, going after this pawn. Or rook d5, maybe. Actually, rook d6 check and then rook d5 makes sense. I think they do, Itachi. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to be sure, right? Like you can't bet on it. The odds are less than 50% that they will cross Magnus's peak, right? But the odds are not 0% either. All three of them have that absolutely top tier talent and capacity. All right, fully rook invests 2 out of 5 minutes and goes after that pawn. And I think rook check and then rook d5 feels right to me. Notice, folks, if white's king were on e2, this move would be so much more dangerous for black to try, right? How important is getting the GM title for me? Very low. I mean, I'd be super happy if I got it, but I'm not really doing anything that would make it possible for me to get it. So if I got it, I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, no big deal. But since I'm currently doing basically nothing to get it, you could say in terms of like what I'm showing with how I spend my time, right? what I'm doing with my time suggests that a lot of other things are more important. Yeah, as Dabo says, being a good dad. I want the title more than Gotham. I don't even know if Gotham wants the title. I don't know much about Gotham right now. Okay, so white goes directly after the A pawn. Here black does have this option of knight c6, and white was probably thinking that rook c4 was just going to repeat. So white gets the pawn this way. Black goes for activity with the rook and targeting this point here. Feels like it's within the range where white can save the game. I'll tell you this, folks. If you don't have the A pawn, this endgame is winning for black. I did once win it. It's very, very hard to win. Very hard. 2-on-3 with the extra knight and just the F pawn as the main target. I did win that endgame once against a grandmaster. And it was quite tricky. But it is technically, winning. Is commenting Friday Night Fights giving me GM level training? No, I'm not going to admit that, Moscow. I'm too ardent a fan of the truth. All right, so white uses rook harassment to keep this knight from going to d3. And black says, all right, I'll prepare this anyway. And if you keep harassing me, maybe I'll come into f3, Maybe. Yeah, that's possible, Depressoir. But then the other thing is, you never know for sure what you would do in that kind of situation until you actually live that situation, right? So maybe you would hunt it, or maybe you would rook a4 check. The king backed up, didn't go all the way in. So I think white's plans to play rook a5, which would repeat the position from one move ago. I'm flattered that that you didn't think that I was blundering in my commentary. White gets sucked into trying to do something different. In general, in defense, it's nice to play repetitions, really quickly and just be confident with them. Put the pressure on your opponent. Don't get your pieces tied up doing fancy things. We worship our supreme leader, Jesse. We have to spread the propaganda. If we had some kind of a cult Moscow, then maybe we would call Jesse the boss, and it would be trust the program, trust the boss. Yes, boss. Yes, boss. Yeah, so folks, here's the little detail that Dabo and I were noticing, is if you came here, there's no longer rook a3, right? And knight d3 could be coming. But actually, weirdly enough, after rook f4, black is checkmated by this weird construction of white pawns and rook. So this would be a big mistake to go forward. So at this point, black backed off, got backed off some more. And now white moves the a pawn. So at this point here, white can't go back here because of knight d3, breaking the base, right? So, and the rook doesn't have a lot of squares on the f file. I remember there's an important question in this opening is whether or not, in this endgame, not opening, is whether or not black can take away all the squares from the rook on the f file, right? And then break this. But there's also like a very important tactic around, going knight d3, rook here, rook check, king g2, knight e1. So white now goes a4 to hold on to that a pawn. Black just puts the rook behind it, keeping the tension and all the threats. Rook e4. Yeah, black should be able to pick off one of these pawns and then eventually pick off the other. I think with great difficulty, this might be winning for black. Oh, my lord. Thanks, 11 years, for the support. Anyone out there who wants to support free Chess Dojo content, such as our Twitch, our YouTube, our podcast, consider our Patreon. Our Patreon, we get most of the money from. I forget the percentage right now, but it's a very high percentage. And I think that to support us on Patreon is $2 a month, if I'm not mistaken. And the $2 a month on Patreon goes towards any free content. That's the idea there. All right, so look at that. White goes to defend f2, and there goes a4. We just have to check that black didn't miss a chance to do something even more evil with this knight. No, they didn't. Okay, so, yeah, just take this pawn. That's good work. That's good work. One pawn down. The battle goes on. The battle goes on. Now we're playing an episode of Endgame Sensei. How long have these guys been playing? It feels like they've been playing for a while, huh? Thanks, Mig. It's nice of you to try and provide this link. I hope that's the right one. I wonder if there's any other way to call it up, like something like socials or something. Does that have our Patreon link? It does. Look at that. And it's the same link that you found, so that's good. Yeah. I've never clicked on that link myself, really. Let's see what it shows me. It says I can join for free. No, supporter, $2 a month. Yeah. $2 a month. It's reasonable. Black won by resignation. Oh, white just couldn't keep up with it anymore, huh? Just got worn down. This endgame is really difficult. The GM made me play it for another hour, Back in Sautron, France. When will we get a Welcome to the Dojo Cult remix? I don't know, Moscow. That's not in the works. I've been sitting on my next chess rap song for almost 2 years because it needs sort of like a specific video to go along with it. I feel really bad. I really would have liked to publish it years ago. Anyway, yeah, you're just going to have to wait a really long time with me, unfortunately. Anybody out there playing the U.S. Open this year? Probably most Americans are in bed by now. Dale's karma. We probably have a mostly Asian, African, European crowd at this time of night. I'm not going to be playing the U.S. Open myself. I'll be spending the summer in Hawaii. Or Hawaii? Anyway, I'll be in Hawaii. Oh, we got somebody in Brazil here, maybe. My in-laws live in Hawaii, so I bring the kids there in the summers sometimes. Can be nice. That was quite a game, and honestly, it could have gone on even longer. So it looks like Daniil Dubov, Jay Anand, so to speak, wins the arena. But the point of these arenas is not really to win them, just to play a game. Also, Nordvik and Igpar winning 2 games each. Fully Rooked winning 2 games, including the one we just watched here, which was great. So, good work to all of them. Knight Without Armor and Mouselip are still fighting as well. Let's have a look over here. Beautiful. Why not try Afghanistan? Yeah, I don't know much about Afghanistan, Moscow. Maybe I should branch out more, excuse me. But, yeah. I guess the reason why not try is just basically like we keep going back because of family, right? All right, white to play here. Looks like there's 2 pawns hanging. And I think white just sacrificed in exchange. So let's just back up one moment. White just chose to sack the exchange, but they weren't yet sure which pawn they wanted to pick next. Yeah, Dabo, sometimes viewers are trying to lure me into something. Sometimes they're trying to trick me. So let's look at this position for a moment. White is up a pawn already with the rook on a great square. And if they wanted to play calmly, could they have done this and just look to collect this pawn? I think, yes, they could. I also have another solution for white. Knight here. Trying to trap that bishop. Bishop takes. Knight takes. Bishop's almost out of squares, right? Bishop here. Rook here. Poor bishop. I think it's going back to e8. I mean, we could argue about rook d6, knight c4, but let's just say like bishop e8, rook c5. That's pretty clean for white. I mean, just 2 extra connected pass pawns with all the pieces pretty equal. So this is a plausible exchange sack, and white might be better and might win with it. And they might want me to bow down to the genius of sacrificing. But I can't help thinking it might have been easier to just win this pawn for free, you know, with rook c7 or knight b6. I feel like either way, white's going to be able to go up 2 pawns for nothing. I don't know how to pronounce that, unfortunately, Moscow. I can't read anything about what you typed there. I mean, when I was a kid, we spent a large number of school vacations visiting one or other of my grandparents. I think that's a pretty normal thing to do to keep a family connected when they don't all live together. So, rook d7, rook d7. White has picked the pawn on c5. They both picked it off, and they've picked which pawn they were picking off. Now, I expect rook c7 from black to tempo the knight and not give white time for knight e5. Not I, Tanky Toma. I don't enjoy bullet myself. And I have my own agenda here, which I tend to follow through on, which is to analyze the viewer games here. Rook e7, defending the pawn. Okay, so I guessed slightly incorrectly. I thought we were just going to get a tempo move. But we get rook here. And now, plausible moves from white include like rook a5 and maybe knight b6, looking to continue improving these pieces. The bishop on d3 is the piece that could improve the most by coming to c4, I guess. Knight b6 comes with tempo by threatening that bishop, and the knight could eventually end up on d7 or d5, so it'll be pretty good on b6. You can also just play a move like b4, but yeah, if black plays knight f4, tuck the bishop on f1, everything's okay. White should be better here with two connected passed pawns, right? But they're not close to queening yet, so it doesn't mean that white's not maybe winning with them, but it means white's going to have to play, 20 good moves instead of 3 good moves, compared if the pawns were way up the board. So they have to keep their concentration, keep focused, keep calculating, and all that. And yeah, white could have had the same position, but with a rook instead of a knight. So I don't think... I don't know how easy this will be, but I like this move here, as I said, making room for this bishop to improve itself. Bishop's going to need to come here. Rawful Fish agrees with improving our pieces. Again, b4 is not a terrible move at any point here either, right? Because these pawns... the real goal is to advance these pawns at some point. And it leaves your knight defended, which is an improvement. And we've already prepared that if they ever play knight f4, we could play bishop c4. So b4 should be fine. The move you'd have to check would be rook b8, right? I guess going after those things. If we go bishop c4, this is also the move I was thinking about, was rook b8. And I was thinking that then we'd probably see knight d5, bishop d5, bishop d5, something like that. White's still good, but... it's not guaranteed by any measure. Not easy. Anything else of interest? Maybe rook a6. White's still thinking. Using the time as white. Bringing the king to e3 is another small improvement that can be made on white's position. Will your pieces improve if you shout at them mid-game? There are definitely chess players who talk about talking to their pieces, but in a tournament situation, or most OTB situations, even if it's not a tournament, your opponent is going to refuse to play with you if you're shouting too much during the game. So, yeah. You'll find yourself stuck. You could definitely shout internally, yeah. But I think Moscow over on YouTube was sort of joking around about some real yelling. Is it worth going a little bit mad to be a great chess player, Joe asks. I'm not sure. To me, it wouldn't be. But each person has to value things for themselves, right? Yeah, Rafflefish predicts knight f4 correctly. And now bishop c4 and bishop f1 both look fine. I think for black, we've only talked about how white should play this position, right? We've only talked about how white should play it, advancing these pawns, moving the pieces to better squares. We haven't talked about, if you're black in this kind of position, how do you go for counterplay? How do you make the game difficult for your opponent, right? And there is a way. And David Justice is on it already, which is to play f5. And I might play king g7 first, just to get my king off of light squares because of the bishops. But basically, you need to create some action elsewhere on the board, since white's better over here. And also, you need an open file for your rooks. And rook d8, king e3, let's say, it doesn't look like that file is going to be enough for black. So black needs to make a break like f5 or g4 to shake up the game. And maybe even with the king on f2, we don't waste time on king g7. Maybe just f5 right away is already the best move here. Okay, instead black plays defensively, trying to prevent, b4 and b5, the advance of this pawn, by looking on the b file. This definitely makes it, hard for white to play still. A long resistance from black. But I would have favored the f5 idea. Just my principle is so clear. What I've been told is when you're up in exchange, you need to have activity for the rooks, which means you need to have an open file. So you got to get something going. Kid left some blueberries on Pruess before going to bed. Very calm move, defending this pawn more to free up the rook from the defense. Evicting the knight. That's why the bishop came back here partly instead of c4. Knight e6 looks okay, right? If one of the players starts cheating Moscow, then we're going to try to explain to them why it's not good. See if they can understand it, make a proper apology and reparation to their opponents. And if not, you know, ask them to leave the dojo, ultimately. There's limits to how much time and effort we can spend on people who are kind of wasting the time and efforts of others. So the knight would be kind of bad on h5, right? So my instinct is to come towards the center here. Make the knight trade. Is black worried about some tactics with bishop c4? I was going to say I don't see anything immediately, but then I thought a little bit longer. This move could be a problem. Because here, right? Something like rook a8, I suppose we could still take. More or less winning for white, right? Rook a7 looks somewhat similar. Takes, 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 takes. That's different. Maybe here first, taking the piece. And then against this, play b4, yeah. Okay, so knight e6, knight a5. What would black do about that? Something like this. Look, this isn't even going to work out for black because there's going to be knight c6 again. Oh, are you the person who originated that idea, Joe? About soccer scoring for chess? Uh-oh. Is this why Mouselip is thinking so long on this move? Because they're fearing this knight a5? Pretty impressive to spot that. I don't even see a defense to it. I thought for sure there'd be some defense, you know, Black just has to defend the knight somewhat. Let's try rook here. Bishop here. Crushing. Huh. Well, folks, I don't know if you see something that I don't. Black's played knight e6 after almost 4 minutes of thought, and yeah, I don't really see any defense to knight a5. I mean, I would expect someone to play knight e6 really quickly, thinking that this move is unacceptable, or if someone thinks a long time, it's because they're seeing that knight e6, knight a5 is deadly, and then I guess after thinking for a while, you have to play knight h5. Ugh. But thinking for a while and then playing knight e6 says that Mouselip calculated something different than I did. Thank you, Tess in my veins. As you can imagine the players have to show a similar stamina to play, right? So I have to be able to keep up with the other dojoers, right? And many dojoers are parents like me who are tired. So it's a struggle for all of us to keep up with each other. But, you know, our Friday night fighters, they're doing what they can, and I'm doing what I can. Oh, David Justice found something. David Justice finding a lot of moves tonight. So knight a5, knight to d8, defending the piece and getting off of that threat. Clean move, Justice. Clean move. Now, I got a weird idea for white that might keep this variation going. But, oh no, never mind, it doesn't. That's all fine. I was thinking, you know, rook d8 to go rook takes... Did I say rook d8 to go rook takes d8? Rook d1 to go rook takes d8, knight c6. And I was thinking about moving the king away so it's not check. That's just me being tired. The key is to move the bishop away, right? So that if white takes, we don't care. Yeah, game would go on. White's still good, but no knockout. No knockout. Rook a6 has been played. Putting pressure in an entirely different way here. Limited choices for black. If the bishop moves, the knight's pretty much going to get whacked. So there's knight d8, and there's knight takes knight. Knight takes knight. Basically, we're trading knight for rook. We come back here. Seems like it just goes on. Moscow saying, I promise I'm not insane. I thought you were trying to convince me you were insane, Moscow, for the last couple minutes. I thought that was your whole game. To spice up my life with a little insanity. With a little game of, do you think I'm insane? Rook a6. Black's played knight d8. Okay. This could go knight a5 direction now, right? Because white might be looking to break through along the 6th rank to that pawn. And knight a5 also lets the bishop on f1 into the game, you know? So it's in the direction of what white wants to do. There might be a better move as well that I'm not seeing yet. But knight a5 is kind of super direct, so it's often the first move you calculate in a situation like this. Knight a5. Really weird possible defense, bishop b5. I don't find an immediate refutation to bishop b5. It's a bit of a weird move. Yeah, I don't see a direct refutation to bishop b5. I apologize for anyone who expected me to calculate well for not calculating well. And white doesn't go for knight a5. Huh. I mean, it's not like I thought knight c4 was bad in any way. Like, bishop b5 didn't lose immediately because if you take this pawn, black trades and double attacks the knights. And weirdly, white sort of has to give a pawn back with b4, right? But against bishop b5, I thought maybe best for white is to trade and then back up here. And this knight clears the way for just sort of starting to push these pawns. We don't win the f6 pawn right away. Black's got time to defend it. But I think white, you know, looks pretty good after something. Oh, wait, knight c6. Where do I go? Oh, the knight's on c6. Great. The c6 is defended. And then here, right? So this looks... It's not a knockout, but it is, you know, continuing to flow in the direction that's pretty good for white. Checkmate indeed. I'm sorry to hear that, Dale's Karma. Obviously, we don't have a huge team of people to answer questions about the website. Well, now we have at least one person. In the past, it was just something that we all shared trying to do now and then. But I can tell you the basics of it is that there's this training plan which gives you tasks to do. So you're supposed to go through this list of tasks. You know, you click on them, you find things to do, and you do them. And when you click on different tasks, you know, a description is going to come up telling you what to do. So that's like the basic. But now the site's also gotten bigger and bigger and more complicated. So there's all kinds of other stuff. Like we've got an online database where you can store your games and you can annotate games and people can check out your games and you can comment on their games. And we've got tactics tests you can take that estimate how good you are at tactics, etc. You wanted to get feedback on what you've done on the tasks. Am I purposely trying to download viruses? No. I have some kind of a blocker, right? 17,000 attempts blocked in 7 days. Is that what you're saying, Moscow? Yeah, that's crazy, huh? Or maybe that's just DuckDuckGo trying to make it seem like they're doing even more work than they are, right? Like if you were someone's bodyguard and you wanted them to think you did a great job, you could be like, I saved your life 23 times on the way to coffee this morning and 50 times at lunch. And since you prevented all of it, I mean, they have no evidence otherwise, maybe. But basically, Dale's Karma, like if you just go about your business doing the tasks in the training program that you're supposed to do, you don't necessarily get responses on them, right? You just do your work. Jesse, Kostya, and I are not like cruising around commenting on what everybody's doing because there's right, there's whatever, almost 2,000 of you all and 3 of us. So the point of the training program is largely for someone to be able to just kind of do it on their own-ish. Mostly. I mean, we should be able to answer some questions now and then as needed, but yeah, let's go on with this game, as you say. So knight e3. Black moves the king to support the pawn. Close call. Yeah, I haven't downloaded any random .exe files from the dark web, Moscow. Nope. In fact, I don't know if I've downloaded anything this week. Oh yeah, a friend sent me a video of themselves. I downloaded that from Discord, though, not from DuckDuckGo. Yeah, that's about it. And the websites I visit, by the way, Moscow, it's not that many. I go to chess.com, I go to ChessDojo, I go to 2700 Chess. Sometimes I scan some headlines on online news sites, even though they're pretty, I'm not trying to say that online news sites are any good, but sometimes I just scan some headlines to see what people are talking about. But generally, I don't do much of that, nor click on the articles. Oh, and I use YouTube. Maybe that's where some of the trackers come from. I do spend some time on YouTube. Bishop b5. Right, looking for some simplification with some trades here. Imagine White's just going to trade. Right, as Carl says, it's possible, and hi, Carl. It's possible that I'm going to some site and it's trying to load a banner ad or something, and DuckDuckGo doesn't let it do it, and then it just keeps trying to load it like 1,000 times. I feel like, whoa. No. This knight was not good enough to trade for this one, was it? I was expecting b4 right here. White simplifies it up. Black sacks the pawn. They must have calculated something. If rook f6, rook d5. If knight f6, rook d2, king e3, rook c2. Sure, perhaps. King e2, stopping this and preparing knight f6, I guess. I think, Carl, that I used to sometimes go to like a news website on my phone, and I didn't have, a DuckDuckGo browser or anything protecting, so to speak. And then I would put the phone down and go do other things, and it would use like all your data. Back when data was a little bit more limited, I guess, right? It would use like all your data in a couple hours while you weren't even using your phone, just loading and reloading ads on a web page. So definitely I could imagine just non-stop repetitive stuff. Rook c5. So black obviously could expect c4 and wants to then play rook b7 and break this pawn duo. The long-term prognosis for black is definitely not good, so it makes sense to try for some trades. Stonewall and make the Dutch pay for it, Dabo. All right, here's the choice. King d3 with some defense. Now, black can sack in exchange, or they can sit tight. Myself, I'd probably sack the exchange, honestly. Just because it feels so long-term unsavable otherwise. I mean, and king f7, rook f6 didn't look promising, and I didn't see anything with f5, rook here, takes. And now it's 3 pass pawns, right? So I don't really see anything to do for black other than sack the exchange. I suppose you could play h5, just getting a little closer to messing with these pawns for some other position where we'll sack and then go after the pawns from behind. So h5 slightly improves black's position. Could be played. But you may also miss your last chance to sack the exchange, because once you go h5 and white plays c4, now you can't get a pawn back on d5. And if you switch over here, the king's close enough to defend that, and then you just kind of under the deluge. Yeah, so it's now or never for Mouselip. I feel like to sack on d5. All right, guys, I apologize. I'm going to have to do like a little bit of multitasking because it's getting so late here. We're going to create the tournaments for Sunday, okay? While we're waiting on the next moves here in this game. So refresh the game and then go to create some tournaments while we're here. Create the Sunday Rapid tournaments, right? So Sunday Rapid under 1300. It's going to be a 3-hour arena. 15.5. The Manual of Chess. Yeah, good book. Let's put it on Sunday, May 4th. At the usual time, 9:30. Does my family think I'm insane listening to me in the background talking to people with names like that? No, I think they're used to what I do. Even the little kids, you know, they get it. All right, black's just waiting with rook d8, so we could see c4 here for white, right? Club Arena, 15.5, 3 hours. Sunday Rapid, 13 to 1700. 3 hours. Put it on Sunday the 4th. Put it at 9:30. Create that tournament, copy the link. Sorry. One more to go. Any move here from white? Not yet. Close that tournament. Create the next one. So now we want the Sunday Rapid for the 1700 plus group. Same time control. Put in the date, May 4th. Almost there, folks. There you go. All done. And now let's go put them into MooBot. All right, 3 new tournaments. Ooh, we gotta move. We gotta move. working. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Carl shows up with a real name, like Carl instead of Mouse Lip. Mouse Lip might be a typo for mouse slip, huh? It could be like a double layered thing. C4. Now it's too late to ever sack on d5 because white can just take back and keep the pawn. And this is coming next. King f7. You can take with check, just backing that king up. And then extricate yourself before black can take the knight. Or somebody already had mouse slip. Yeah, possible. I think Carl's a real person, Moscow, yeah. Good chance that Carl's real name is Carl as well. Call me stupid, call me naive, but that's my feeling. Now this rook should be moved before black takes on d5. And it could go to e6 to go after this pawn, or it could go to a6 just to get nice checking distance and start to move the b pawn. Yeah, heck, it could go to b6. It's fine too. That's a good point, actually, Dale. On a site like chess.com, there's a high chance that somebody has the username mouse slip, right? Let's try mouse slip. Account closed. Played 2 games and got closed. Played against the Blackthorn. Wow. Yeah, there's something very real about Carl where it just feels like somebody who's just like, yeah, my name's Carl. We might be on the internet. Maybe I could have called myself, Crazy Spoiler 1376. But yeah, Carl will do. Rook comes back to the freshly weakened e-pawn. White's got 3 extra pawns right now, as well as a knight that's not too much worse than a rook. And it's looking grim. I was sort of expecting rook f8 here. And what I'd calculated was rook f8, b4, rook c8, and then what am I doing? If king e3, there's rook takes c4. Yeah, so rook f8 makes sense. White might have to trade a pawn with f4. No, Mouselip says that's enough. And I'm going to say something similar. I'm going to say David is ready to go to bed as well. But actually, before I do, I've got yet another interesting thing to say. I always want to go to bed and also want to keep talking. We saw 2 endgames tonight where players resigned when the endgame was still somewhat difficult, I would say. 2 games where people resigned earlier than I would have, at least. Yeah, I know it's tough to be in a worse position. I've survived very few worse positions in my life. So I understand that it can be depressing to have a worse position. It feels like you're never going to come back, but you can also just keep playing some moves. All right. That was not that special an insight, but it was just a notable pattern for tonight. I hope everybody's doing well and a little sharper than me. And we'll start to work towards the moment where we part here. I'm going to look for someone to raid.